feel really good. I finally tweeted out the link, so I feel like that's better. Okay. So what's up, you beautiful people? This is Gary Horde, and this is the NWA. It's a podcast celebrating the past, present, future, history, legacy, and tradition of the greatest pro wrestling entity of all time. We're talking about the National Wrestling Alliance, and that remains true to this day and every day. Henceforth, it will still be the greatest pro wrestling entity of all time. It is not dead. Nay, it lives. The stone is rolled away. Stinson will love that one. We
having camp meeting. We having camp meeting.
Yeah, there we go. There we go. We are here to preach the glory of the National Wrestling Alliance. And with me, as always, as you just heard, is the doctor of style, the doctor of chest, Mr. Robert Stinson. Welcome.
Doc McLovin in the house. NWA fam for life. Hashtag NWA fam for life.
Yeah, I love it. And of course, the man, the myth, the legend, the daily man himself. Hey, it's Will.Daily. Will Martin is here.
Yes, breathe it in. Breathe it in. We're here.
I wasn't sure what that was. This is NWA After Dark. So there was a lot of things that could have been, Bukkake being one. And it was luckily breathing in the air of NWA. Is that inappropriate? Is Piper still in the room? Is she gone?
No, I sent her to bed when I told her there might be some cussing.
Okay. Technically no cursing yet, but it's bound to happen. Folks, we are here. We are live. If you thought we were going away, despite everything that's going on in the world, hey, we laid out for a little bit, but we're back. And we're going to be here because the NWA needs a little break. But the NWA fam, the hashtag NWA fam, is still alive. So we are here to chew bubble gum and make gravy cake, and we're all out of bubble gum. So I hope you guys are here to make gravy cake with us. And this is already off the rails, and I love it. And so welcome, you guys. We still had a week of Cardiland we could talk about. A lot of news. Obviously, you're going to want to talk about some of that. I'm sure we're here. We're going to be respectful, Rob, when we discuss it, but we're going to... Rob's so disappointed I called him out.
Why?
Because...
You're showing the most chest. We're just making...
I'm literally normally I'm down here.
Okay.
Tonight I'm up here, okay? It's Father's Day.
It is Father's Day. Happy Father's Day to all you beautiful fathers out there. That is Rob and Will are fathers. I have, beautiful fathers. Why can't fathers be beautiful?
We can.
Our real world's champion, Nick Aldis, is the father, and he was showing his beautiful family off today. Happy Father's Day to the champ. Happy Father's Day to our president, William Patrick Corrigan, who is a very good and noble father, and he's I'm sure he's enjoying his day today as well.
Yeah, and by the way, still the champ. Still the champ is Nick Aldis, still out there carrying the 10 pounds of gold with pride. He is yours and mine, real world's heavyweight champion. So I've been seeing this pop up all over the interwebs where you people are talking about, not you people, but a lot of people, probably not you people, because you people are very intelligent. The people are acting like, what's going to happen? Did everything implode? Is everything dead and gone? Is the NWA over forever? Come on, man. It's been around for 70 plus years, at least. This ain't it for the National Wrestling Alliance. I'm on board with whatever needs to happen from here. Decisions had to be made, but a break is certainly not death. It's a totally different thing. So they're going to regroup and they're going to come back. And when they do, we're going to be right here waiting for them. And we're going to have kept our community alive. And I don't mean we, like just us three. I mean like us, the hashtag NWA fam, is going to keep this thing alive. We're going to keep the community going, the energy, the excitement. We're going to still have ideas for what to do from here. And we welcome your ideas. What do you want to see happen from here? How do we make this thing, we just keep the flame going as bright and hot as it always has been, because the NWA is too good to go away. And so we gotta make sure that keeps running. I'm talking a lot, guys. How are you both feeling?
You're doing well, Gary. You're cutting a pretty nice promo there. I'm doing good, man. Obviously, it was a long, heavy week. We're not going to ignore what's going on, the reality of it, and the changes that are happening. But man, ultimately, I am excited about the future of NWA. I'm excited about this opportunity for us to, and when I say us, I also mean everyone in the chat, everyone that's part of the hashtag NWA fam, picking up this torch and carrying it during this, hiatus, however long it may be in NWA programming. And, I believe fully we're going to come out of the other side of this better than before, and with a renewed vigor and passion for the National Wrestling Alliance, wrestling as a whole. And, every great, obstacle is an opportunity for a great progression. And that's kind of where we find ourselves right now. So I would implore everyone listening to this to join me in that way of thinking and that perspective, because there's a lot of little talking points and a lot of little things that we can focus on. There's definitely a lot of negative that we can choose to focus on. But if we choose to focus on the potential, the positive, the ability that the NWA has always had to overcome adversity. Like, my gosh, this is not the first time that the National Wrestling Alliance has faced a seemingly insurmountable obstacle. And they've lived to tell about it. So I'm excited about it ultimately. Doc, how you feeling?
Yeah, you just have to read the Hornbaker book on the National Wrestling Alliance and read about FBI investigations into racketeering scandals and things like that to know that, look, the NWA is huge. As our champion Nick Aldis put out on Instagram the other day, it's bigger than one person. The NWA it pervades professional wrestling. It is professional wrestling, and we're going to be just fine. And it's not just the three of us. Now we are going to do our work, and we're going to carry our fair share of the burden to sustain this company through this time. But we're relying on our fans. We got WWE Front Row. We got RJ from Ringside Rant. We've got J Cal. We've got Rotella and Elder Sour over at 10 Pounds of Podcast. We've got Vanessa Wiper in the chat. We've got Cool Man 952. We've got a family. The NWA is a family. It's not, it's not going to be shaken by a distraction or by an unfortunate event or this or that. The NWA is here to stay. It's not going anywhere. It's been here essentially since the foundations of the world. We can trace the lineal title all the way back to Bible times, right? If I do my research, we can trace it all the way back to Bible times, and it ain't going nowhere. And we're going to be here.
JC, original carrier of the 10 pounds of gold, if I'm not mistaken.
That's right. I feel good. I'm optimistic. We had a beautiful Father's Day. I was bummed out yesterday, but I have a whole new perspective today. The NWA is alive and well. We're here to stay. Our champ has been champion for 610 days, and that has only been done in human history 9 times. So we're doing pretty good.
That is amazing. See, I love that he's keeping track of that. That's the kind of stuff you could expect from a podcast such as this. This is the NWA podcast. We love you guys. Thank you guys so much for everybody that's in the chat right now, everybody that listens on the show, like on the podcast feed and everything. If you haven't already, we'd love it if you hit subscribe on YouTube. I promise you, things aren't going to slow down here. We're only turning it up. We've got big things in the works, and we will be here for you to help keep this community going. So obviously, we could look at this as a big doubter. You could see that we're choosing not to. And that's, again, no disrespect to what's happening in the business. We get it. It's been tough. It's been a tough week for a lot of people. And we're not even directly involved in that. So I don't even want to make it about us as far as that goes. I don't want to make any of this about us. It's just that we believe in the NWA fam, and we want to make sure that at least that keeps going. And so like Rob said and Will said, it's been a heavy week. So we're here in the chat, whatever you guys want to talk about. And of course, Cardi Land this past week with some good content. We all tuned in on Tuesday and saw, sadly, we got a bit of a scandal and sort of stuff going on with Cardi Land, but I think I'd imagine there's not really much more going to unfold about that. So it's probably not really worth going too deep into that, since that storyline might be kind of dead right this moment. But Cardi Land was much more than just that one show. A lot of the good stuff from it that we got out of it was like the Eli Drake Show, the What's Causing All This, Inside the NWA, and Girl Power. Now, I don't think we got a Girl Power this week that I saw, but of course that was the day everything started unfolding. So, but I guess we could start with the Eli Drake Show if you guys want to. I can't think of a better person to really talk about the Eli Drake Show right off the bat than Rob Stinson. How are you? Are you hot or cold on Eli Drake after this week's episode of the Eli Drake Show?
I'm hot and I'm cold. How's the song go? I'm up and I'm down.
Are you trying to make a Katy Perry reference?
I would never make a Kelly Perry reference.
Kelly Perry, okay.
I know all there is to know about pop culture.
Move on.
Pop culture, but man, Kelly Perry, doggone Jason Bieber, Sharina Gomez, LaVon James, I know all of them. One Destination, I know all of them. But anyway, Eli Drake. I love him. I can't stand them. It's like there's so many things in there. Like, the 30-day challenge, one of the best things that's ever been put out in Cardi Land. I don't know. I've started it. I don't know if Gary and Will have yet. They're supposed to have a couple days ago. So I'm not going to put them on the spot right now, but there's so much.
I failed. I've just recently started. I did not start it when I said I was going to. Well, I'll admit it.
Fail because, as Eli said, always move forward. So if you've started, then you've not failed. You're just a little bit behind.
Good point.
That's all. So
see, how can you hate on that? That's very motivational. That's inspiration.
What I can hate on though, you're hot. Hold on, Vanessa Wiper. You're hot, then you're cold. Keep on feeding me those lyrics because I will sing this.
Don't feed him the lyrics; he'll sing it.
I'll do it.
No, the thing with Eli Drake, I'm a dad, but I'm a human being. Profanity is like, I don't get squeamish about profanity. I get squeamish about like so much profanity, the type of like taking the Lord's name in vain, that kind of thing. That kind of bugs me. And Will and I were talking before the show went live about how much on the podcast it was bleeped out. Like you when you're and your kids are around, you're like, gosh, man, why can't you just clean it up? It doesn't add anything to the show. So the language bit for a lot of people, that's not going to be a big hangout. If I've got kids around me, it's a bigger hangout just because I've got to explain it. But he goes off, starts off by complaining about how he's not pleased with the viewership, and if you're not watching, then you can go F yourself and GD it, this and that. He introduces the meter, and I'm like, gosh, man, I hope that we don't introduce the meter here, because if we do, man, we're gonna be racking up those ums, man. But he introduced that, and then he goes into a diatribe about the leg slapping hysteria that's going around in wrestling today. How everybody feels like they got to slap their leg, and he goes on and talks about how back in the day when he was coming up, that you might do it once in a match to get an effect, but it's like everybody's doing it. 20 times in a match. He does this little routine. I don't know if you saw that, Will.
Yep. Yeah, that part stood out to me too. And I mean, I go back and forth as I was listening to that, because as you mentioned, I was listening to the audio version, which was unfortunate because it's the week that he's watching a match, and I couldn't see it. So, maybe I'll go back and watch it. But, as you guys know, the week got a little busy after that. But the leg slapping bit was an interesting conversation. I was like simultaneously liking it and like a little bit uncomfortable at just the pulling back the curtain part. And I'm not big on kayfabe and the death of kayfabe and all this stuff. Like I love having that insider's look to stuff. But the more he talked about it, I just kind of felt weird about it. I don't know why. I don't know how you guys felt about that, but just, you know, what he said was making a lot of sense. You know, if you're, you know, and I remember that. I remember as a kid having one leg slap a night and it was like, oh my gosh, that was incredible. And then, you know, you go watch AEW now and it's like they're leg slapping if they look at the guy real hard. You know, it's like it has kind of lost its luster. And so it's just an example in wrestling as in anything else that oversaturation is going to kill the impact of something. So I agree with what he said. It just, you know, he was obviously hot about it and it seemed a little bit like he was just trying to get in on the conversation that, you know, Randy Orton had brought it up, I guess, with him and Tommaso Ciampa. And but, you know, and I'm with you. And I told Rob this earlier and I told him I would say this on the show, but the one area during this episode of Eli Drake Show that I kind of moved over a little bit closer to Rob, in my opinion, was something that Rob's talked about in the past about Eli being the world's champion. And I did, with that in mind, I did just kind of start to see what Rob's talking about, you know, about I can't imagine this guy, the way he was talking, his whole vibe and everything, being the representative, the world's champion of the NWA. It was just kind of weird. I mean, his in-ring persona, yes, because he's a strong, charismatic, well-spoken guy. But this like Eli Drake Show version of him, it was just a little, I don't know. It this week especially, maybe Rob's just getting to me. Maybe you've preached enough to me that I've come over and kind of adopted your viewpoint on this. But it definitely did stick out to me, and I was remembering a lot of the things that you had said about that.
Yeah,
do you back away though and look at do you look at like these personalities that are on these shows separately from who they're portraying on NWA Power?
Well, and that's the big question. That's the big question. Like, it's like that, like, you know, I think we talked about this before, but we talk about authenticity and we want that authenticity, but not too much of it. You know, how much is too much when it comes to authenticity? And it's like, you know, I do appreciate, you know, when it's, I think it just comes down to what kind it is. So I love to hear Nick Aldis sit down with Doug Williams and talk about the business, right? And it's very professional. It's very buttoned up. They're talking about, you know, really good things, but it just didn't feel the same to hear Eli Drake just ranting about something within the, you know what I mean? So it was just a different vibe. It didn't hit me the same with the same, like, oh, this is cool, as when like an Aldis or an Inside the NWA or something like that.
Right. And remember in his conversation with Brian Pillman, that came up and Eli himself had a hard time drawing the distinction between what he presents out there on social media and between his persona in the ring. It's almost like, you know, he feels like he's got to be that. And don't get me wrong, I don't want anybody out there listening to misunderstand Will or I. We think that Eli Drake could be that Magnum TA foil to Nick Aldis. I think that he's busting at the seams with ability and charisma. But remember that when you hold the title, you assume almost like an elected office, a public office. You're the face of the company. There has to be a gravitas and a level of solemnity and a level of gravity about what you do and the way you carry yourself. And when Eli Drake, and we'll get more into it, when Eli Drake's talking about pooping, you know, and potty humor and this and that, those aren't the kinds of conversations that we're ever going to hear Nick Aldis talk about. We would never. Now, Ric Flair could be crass about, you know, being a man of the night and being a womanizer and going to bars and throwing money around. But he did it in a way where he promoted the fact that he was a man of substance and material and he had money to spend. That's what he talked about. But when we're out there talking about, hey, potty humor and farting and you know, dropping this and this epithet and all that, those are not the kinds of I just think it doesn't help Eli's image, because this is someone that I believe could fully be a world champion. I don't believe that that Eli would be a long-term world champion. He could be, I guess, if he changed his persona a bit, but he could certainly hold the belt. He could break up a couple of Aldous reigns for sure. He could be a 2, 3, 4-time world champion. And he has been a world champion in TNA or Impact or whatever, whatever you want to call it. So this is no shade on Eli. We're just fans talking about what we think is the best to represent the company. We have a sense of who that title carrier should be and what it means to carry that. And we've heard guys like the Nature Boy Buddy Landell talk about how he missed the opportunity to be a world champion just because he missed one chance in which he did not represent himself well as a potential title holder. So potential world champions have to keep that in mind.
100% agree. What other big notes did you have there, Rob, in regards to the Eli Drake Show stuff that stood out to you?
He had a great analysis of a match from back in 2004 when he was only 18 months into the business. He was 21 years old. He wrestles a man named Mike Desire for the HWA TV Tower. Now, you guys know HWA, Heartland Wrestling Association, is a promotion that promoted the first Brian Pillman tribute event. This was founded by Les Thatcher. It was a WWF and WCW developmental platform for a while, I think back in the 90s and the 2000s. And for about 2 or 3 months, Eli Drake, who at the time was known as Deuce, held the TV title. It was one of his earliest titles, maybe his first title. I'm not quite sure about that. But he goes in and gives a really good analysis, man. This is the kind of stuff that I want to hear from Eli. Ring psychology. He talks about how since he were the babyface, he wished that the match would have been a little more up pace. He talks about how he adopted "Push It to the Limit" as his ring music, and that eventually that evolved into a scene where women were giving him dollar bills, almost like he was a male stripper or something. He said that he was only 210 pounds, which I find it hard to believe because he looks like he's about 240, but that he never worked legs. He came to work legs later on in life. And that he said, my favorite point was that he said 90% of his matches in this time, including this match, were worked on the fly. They didn't talk about the match beforehand. They were calling it on the go. And I've worked as a referee in matches before. My brother does a lot of ref work up here. People will tell you the hardest thing to do in wrestling is to work matches on the fly and make it look good. And he was saying that at 18 months in his career, this is what they were doing. And it was a cool match. And I loved hearing him break it down like that.
Yeah. Like I said, I was listening to it, so it was a little difficult to picture in my mind. But I do want to go back and watch that just because I was intrigued. I liked his insight on it. It was really cool. I would love to see more of that kind of stuff from guys. I'd love to see Aldous, doing a watch along with one of his matches and giving the same kind of commentary. I thought that was cool.
You can't put a price tag on one of these legitimate world championship caliber talents providing analysis on their own matches. That right there, it's like when we were talking with Dave Marquez. That is, you should be paying tuition for that. So that was to me, that was the hidden gem in the rough there of a lot of stuff that I could have done without, like the next segment where he goes into going into the bathroom and having to make a lot of noise so his girlfriend doesn't hear him doing the deed, because of course he doesn't do the deed and neither does she. And I'm not gonna lie, it was funny. I chuckled a lot, and because we've all been there. But I'm you're not gonna have that conversation with your girlfriend. You're definitely not gonna have that with the public if you take yourself seriously as a world champion. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's interesting. I was in the chat when that video debuted that day, so I jumped on YouTube and don't tell my job, but I jumped on YouTube and I was watching it along with everybody, and so I asked the question in the comment section, just what's your relationship like? Do you relate to Eli's side of things, or where are you guys at? And his girlfriend was actually in the chat and pointed out, she's like, Well, I can already tell you're hearing our side of it right now, and he is 100% telling the truth. Like this is how it is. And so I just found that very interesting. I get it, but I don't know, man. Maybe I'm more crass than I should be.
Eli, I think Eli, like I really do. Like I never got him. He used to always rub me wrong back in Impact when he would do the whole dummy thing. I don't know why. Like it's just a little thing, but I like never stuck with me. But when we were at the tapings, Gary, and he came out and I saw him in person, it was the first time I'd seen him in person. I've been to Impact shows before, but that was the first time I'd seen him in person. And I was like, man, I get it. Like, I get it. This Joker walks in the room and immediately fills the room with charisma. So he has got the ability to be a Magnum TA, a Ronnie Garvin, a Dusty Rhodes. He's got that personality. He's so good. But, it's like things like, this like awareness of just because you can say something doesn't mean he goes on. It's like a badge of honor for him that he's gotten fired for saying things. I'm like, well, for me, it's not, because I'm a professional. I've worked hard to earn my degrees and to get where I've gotten. If I don't have the wherewithal to hold my tongue to the point that I'm not going to get fired, that's not a badge of honor. That's you need to grow up some. And then he says, like right at the end now, at the end of the episode, he says, kids, turn this off if you don't like what I'm about to say. I'm like, Eli, my kids done turned this off. They turned this off 40 minutes ago. Now we're at the end, and he says, I don't like, why would you prefer the muddy side to the slippery side? I'm like, dude, that is out of line, especially with like the climate of today. You're out of line for saying that. You can't clean that up. You should not have said that. That's it. You're wrong, dude.
I knew if we hung out long enough, we would get Rob Stinson fired up. Like we'd get the angry side of Rob. So it's good to finally see that come out. I want to take a second real quick, if we can, to give a shout out to people in the chat right now. The chat's going wild. Peter Peckney, WWE Front Row, Brian Rosa, Ringside Rant, Vanessa Wiper, James H. Jackson Jr., Coolman 952, and Mr. Brian Rosa is in the chat. Brian Cervantes, of course, somewhat of a connection to Thunder Rosa. I'm not sure how that works, but anyway, I especially give a shout out to Brian, because he's very supportive, not only of the podcast, but as you can see him commenting in the chat, the Rosa family has NWA's back 1000% until told otherwise. So Brian, we are 100% grateful for you guys and what you do. And yeah, Thunder Rosa, a fantabulous women's champion, and could not ask for better. Just super happy. Yeah. And Brian actually announced, Thunder Rosa and himself, like they have a promotion, Mission Pro in Texas. And Brian, just with the environment of everything going on right now, just announced the other day that company, that promotion is going to be going all female. Just like as far as the wrestling and the backing, he has turned the company over to his wife. And she is going to be handling all of that, but they're going to try to give jobs to women in all aspects of Mission Pro Wrestling. So that's a pretty cool thing. So we'll be sure that once you guys get rolling on that, you can count on us to support you guys and what you do. We are grateful for you to be here. Let's see here. WWE Front Row mentions in there that Aldis curses all the time on his show. He guesses Cardi Land doesn't have the same guidelines across shows. I think context might matter somewhat too.
Right. And WWE Front Row. I love WWE Front Row. He's a great guy. He's critical to the hashtag NWA fame. Man, this guy's at shows. He's been there since the beginning. And it's not about cursing. Like, cursing is cursing. I curse in front of my daughters. Gary caught me on the phone one day cursing in front of my daughters. It's not about cursing. I think there's an appropriate time to do that. I'm not squeamish about cursing. It's 100% context. Like, I don't like, and I'm not trying to preach to anybody. This is my own values in my house. So we don't like GD. We don't like taking the Lord's name. We don't like irreverent cursing. I definitely don't like sexual cursing or sexual innuendo in front of my kids. Like, the muddy side versus the slippery side. For me, you're out of line. All this curses, but he doesn't do it like that. There's no comparison.
What it's worth, you've said it more in NWA After Dark than Drake said it.
Yeah, right. It's true. True. Yeah. But much love, front row. I get what you're saying, man. But I just want you to understand, I'm not trying to be inconsistent. I mean, I curse. It's not about cursing. Cursing is, I'm not squeamish about that. I was an infantry officer for 8 years, and I curse every day. I cursed just right before we went live. I'm going to curse on this show tonight. It's context, and it's there's degrees of what's irreverent and what's vulgar and inappropriate and just common cursing in Parliament. So I hope that makes sense. I don't know.
Yeah, I think it does. Did you guys have anything else you wanted to point out from the Eli Drake show this week before we move the conversation along to something else? No. So the next thing I want to talk about is really the next thing that came out, or the next thing we could talk about would maybe be like inside the NWA, but I actually want to save that one if we can, because I think that could lead into some deeper discussion. So let's move to this week's What's Causing Aldis. Nick Aldis sat down with Camille, and I mean that he impresses me every week. Nick Aldis has a career in this business long after his ring work is done. He's an excellent interviewer. I'm sure we'll make an excellent commentator at some point. All of that stuff. That's a guy who's got it all in this business. And that's not me blowing smoke. It's just facts. You can watch it. This show, What's Causing Aldis, gets better every single week. Everybody he interviews, it's fascinating and engaging. And Camille was no different. I literally only got to listen to it today. But just the depth, and I'm curious how you guys handled this one, because they also give you a little bit behind the curtain. They kind of go into that process. Where does Camille / Kaylee come from? What's her history in the wrestling business? How did her becoming Nick Aldis's bodyguard come to be? What was the thought process of her not learning to speak, but starting to speak? That whole thing. Were you guys cool with the amount of detail they went into as far as the backstory on Camille and that sort of thing?
Yeah, I was, man. And I mean, again, it's the context. I mean, it was cool because it was two people talking about it that were there throughout. I mean, she's been an integral part of Aldis's title reign, and just hearing how that came about. I mean, what I love about that, and I think they talked about it in this episode, I think I'm not remembering this from something else, but they talked about just we talk about it on the show, but the common sense part of wrestling psychology. The wrestling psychology is common sense. And so, the whole idea that Aldis needed an insurance policy or a bodyguard or a valet or whatever you want to call it, was to combat Brandy, who was there for Cody during that feud. And I love that so much. And I love every time that they get a chance to talk through that way of thinking, because again, it just makes sense to me. And I love it when wrestling makes sense to me. And as a WWE fan for the past few years, it has not made sense to me. And so I grab onto these parts of the NWA that actually make sense. And I mean, all of it actually makes sense. So, but this is just one example. I mean, when they talk about that, I'm reinvigorated with that whole mentality, the clarity of thought when it comes to storylines and continuity and things making sense in the NWA. So I like hearing that particular story, especially from their viewpoint and how that all came to be. But I like the conversation as a whole. I don't think anything was overstepped or too much. I think, I mean, they definitely got into a lot of the backstage talk and how pulling back the curtain on some things. But, again, I appreciate that in this instance, because it was directly applicable to something that made sense, and to a storyline, and to a faction, and a teaming up of he and Camille that made sense. So I liked hearing about that.
I liked how at the beginning he referred to the Camille mythology. He used that phrase, and that's kind of the way we took it. I may have shared this story on one of our episodes before, but Piper, my daughter, when Camille was not talking, she comes up to me one day and she's like, "Dad, I know something you don't know." I'm like, "What are you talking about?" She goes, "I know Camille can talk." like, what are you talking about? She doesn't talk. You know, I mean, she can talk, but she doesn't talk. She goes, well, she has a cooking show out on YouTube. And I was like, you don't say nothing about that. Yeah. So, but I love, like she was aware enough of the mythology to bring that up to me. And it's cool. I love the Camille mythology, but I really was intrigued by it because I liked how, for one, I was not aware that she had been wrestling in the independent circle before the football stint. I thought that they found her from football. And but she, you know, they talk about how Mr. Lagana was always on the lookout for talent, and they had known her and seen her and plugged her and had recruited her to come in. And so that was fascinating to me that she had done the indie thing, and then through Lagana's connections, he had seen her through that, and then through football, and brought her into NWA. So I really, this is one of my favorite. I mean, I really like the Doug Williams talk. This one was a cool one. If you haven't listened to it, y'all need to go back. It's neat to peel back the layers of the mythology, because even though that Camille is putting a lot of content out there, she's applying makeup, she's doing a lot of stuff as far as creating content and stuff on social media, she's still got a mythology about her, you know. She's still this fierce woman, and I think we're all in the family intrigued about her.
Yeah, it's you know, you mentioned that cooking show. It's funny that Piper found that. I remember I found that. I stumbled upon that same thing one day on YouTube, and I shared it on Twitter, and I was like, holy crap, people, check this out. If you were looking for a different side of Camille, and Camille like instantly replied back with like the emoji of like shh. Like and I think part of it was that she was getting ready to start doing a lot more on her YouTube, but she wasn't at that point yet. So that was kind of fun to see. But I wanted to go back real quick to something Will talked about too, as far as making sense in wrestling. One of the cool things about this interview that I had not ever even considered, I think inherently I just felt it or knew it in my brain, like in the back of my mind somewhere. But when they detail that whole process with Cody Rhodes and everything that Will just talked about as far as why Camille was brought in here and that sort of thing, even when they get to Strictly Business, they go into some details about how that process worked and the thought that went into the formation of Strictly Business. So starting with the fact that Nick Aldis felt like, well, these people respect me and I'm de facto babyface here just because of that, and I carry the belt and I'm kind of the face of the company and trying to lead the charge here, but we got too many baby faces, and it would be way better if I was leading a pack of heels so we could do something about that. And so, which is simple enough, but the fact that he first was gung-ho enough to do that and aware, self-aware enough to know that, and self-aware to know the next part where he talks about like detailing the build to first Camille beginning to speak and her turn, as far as even putting in the thought to make the promo about like, she's no longer my bodyguard, so that it just kind of slowly built into this and people could adapt to the changes that were about to come. And then to know that, yeah, it might've seemed out of nowhere for Tim Storm to be the guy they attacked, but they're the lead dogs, and Tim Storm is the only person that's loved more than Nick Aldis right at this moment in time in wrestling. And if I'm going to be the top bad guy, I got to take out the top good guy. And it's like, it's not going to work unless I like kill off the ultimate babyface. And so it was just like this, I just loved that, hearing that part of it, that when the decision was made that this is what needs to happen, it was like no other choice. Who you got to take out? You got to take out Tim Storm. Like, that's the one. They can't love me after that. I mean, obviously, people still did, but I mean, Stinson's never going to give up on all this. But hey, I switched immediately. If you were watching the show back then, I was like, what the hell, Nick Aldis? I want to support you, but you are a bastard. And so it worked on me. I was anti that decision by Nick, but it was really cool to hear him lay that out here, I thought.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I'm not one to certainly challenge Nick Aldis in his assessment, but you know, my approach and my perspective has been that being a heel and being a face has never been that big a preoccupation in the NWA, and I understand balancing the dynamic, but it really hasn't worked because you go into even after the Tim Storm affair and the formation of Strictly Business, you go into the TV tapings and those, and you go into pay-per-views or whatever. The crowd, the NWA crowd, is almost always behind all this. And they're almost always behind Tim Storm. I mean, it's like they don't get to choose who we love and hate. You know, the fact of the matter is, Nick Aldis carries the championship and the promotion with dignity and honor and grace, despite what happened with Tim Storm. Tim Storm carries himself with dignity, honor, and grace, and they're prize fighters. And so the competition between them is a natural progression. It's one between two potential rivals for the top prize in the company. So I don't look at this like the four horsemen jumping dusty roads in the parking lot. This is, hey man, you know, this is my challenger, and we're gonna make no bones about it. The target's on his back as long as he's a challenger. So.
All right. Well, let's take a look at the chat and see what people are talking about. I saw some stuff going back and forth. A lot of discussion, guys, in the chat right now about, I don't know. I'm going to be honest with you with how I feel here is it all feels almost too soon for me to be having these discussions, but I would be disingenuous just if I said that I hadn't thought about it, and that obviously this is where the chat's headed. So it is worth discussing. What I'm talking about here is if you're listening to this later on in the live chat right now, a lot of speculation about what happens for the NWA here or from here in regards to the leadership roles, the executive field in the NWA, I guess would be the way to put it. Backstage stuff, VPs, like who would Billy Corrigan, our president, bring up to replace what's been lost? And so some obvious names you're seeing in there right now would be David Marquez being mentioned. I saw someone mention like maybe there's a female that could be moved into a position of power. I saw that from Brian Rosa. He is, I don't know if he's politicking for his wife here, but it could be. But yeah, I'm even seeing so far. I saw Jim Cornette in there, which seems like a real can of worms you don't want to play with right now. And I see names like Hulk Hogan and Eric Bischoff that are tossed around in the chat. And that one, I can't help but laugh. That seems like the most insane thing to say right now. But, you know, maybe. I guess I'll throw to you guys. Like, have you been thinking about this at all? Is like, the thoughts had to cross your mind, right? Like, where are you on this as far as that goes? We'll start with you.
Yeah, for me, I just don't think it's going to be any of those names. Not, you know, my opinion of those names individually notwithstanding. I think the NWA as a whole, and especially with what's happened, it's more of a grassroots thing. I mean, even look at Nick Aldis. I mean, they brought in, you know, to make kind of the flag bearer champion for the rebirth of the NWA. They didn't bring in like a WWE well-known talent, right? They didn't sign somebody just for name recognition. The NWA is much more, you know, prone to build up their own, you know, grassroots kind of. So, I mean, you look at Ricky Starks and guys like that. I mean, that's what they've been doing. And I think it's going to be the same way with this restructuring. I think it's going to be maybe even someone we've never even heard of, but just someone that has the clout within the business, or someone that is stepping in. I'd love for it to be a female. I think that would be a great trail to blaze, having, you know, a female in that kind of position. I think, you know, I mean, I'll compare it. Rob will like this. I'll compare it to the Atlanta Braves, man. I mean, the Braves back in the 90s, they weren't trying to go out and sign Barry Bonds and people like that. They were trying to bring up guys in their system and, you know, create a championship baseball team around that. And it worked throughout the 90s. And I think NWA is kind of the same way. And So I don't think it's going to be any of these headline catching names, especially with everything that's gone on. I think it's going to be much more under the radar, and one of those things that kind of us as NWA fans, it might leave us going, who is that? And having to do some research. And but ultimately, I believe whoever lands in that position is going to be the right person. And I trust Corrigan, and I trust the overall vision of the NWA. And I know Nick Aldis, our champion, is working closely with the leadership to, and he's an established guy. He's got a good head on his shoulders. And so I think whatever direction they end up going in is going to be positive.
Yeah, if you concentrated, how can I say this? You concentrated too much in one person. This might be the time now to delegate and to spread the labor out a bit. You've got a lot of talent in the NWA. You've got really creative guys like Josephus, who's had a hand in production and the vision of the company. Nick Aldis, obviously. You've got David Marquez, who runs companies and has done that before. And you've got even people like Brian Rosa, who's worked with Thunder Rosa and has done some stuff with independent promotions and this and that. I mean, I guess if it were me, and I don't know, again, we've not been in the inner workings of how the back things work and all that, but if it were me, I would try to assemble a team to carry the burden. That way you're not wholly dependent on one person to do things. And the NWA has been well managed. It's had a great vision, and there's no stain on it at all. But if all that's been vested in one person, then now maybe the time to break that down into its composite parts into different people that are very, very talented, like NWA Maureen, Esteria, again, a Brian Rosa, for example, a Marquez, Nick Aldis, Josephus. These are all guys that have played an instrumental part. Tim Storm have all played an instrumental part in where the NWA is going to go and where it will go. And so it's no, to me, if I were Mr. Corrigan, I would pull the team together and say, okay, we're dividing this executive vice president role into this department, this department, this department, and this department. And Maureen, you're doing public relations and sales. Nick Aldis, you're doing this. Josephus, you're in the creative department, whatever, what I'm saying? So there's enough talent out there. And the NWA, I think, is really uniquely situated to thrive from a situation like this. So I'm not pessimistic at all. I think what's happened this week has really kind of stunned us all and saddened us all, but it's going to be okay. We've got people out there that can pick up the slack and run with the ball and take the NWA to heights that we never imagined.
For what it's worth, I will mention the cornet thing fell apart immediately in the chat. You had people like Brian Rosa saying, okay, well, if that happened, my 1,000% behind the NWA would drop to 0. And a lot of people followed suit with that exact same comment. So I don't see that in the immediate future. But Rob did drop a name that I think is well worth mentioning, and I'm almost sad with myself that I haven't brought it up before now. And maybe exactly what you're saying, Rob, is the right way to go. But one person that deserves a shout out here that is getting a lot of love in the chat right now is Maureen Tracy, who obviously is the operations manager of the National Wrestling Alliance and an angel. She is a great, great lady. And she has a lot of experience with independent wrestling and women's wrestling specifically. I know that I've talked to her about her love for women's wrestling, and she is like a stable of people with her. She calls her kids. Like, she's got this motherly approach to the professional wrestling business as far as wanting to help and keep her people prospering. And she's got a good heart. And I guess that's what I really want to get across, is that if you've ever been to an NWA event in this modern era, you have dealt with Maureen at some point. She is pretty much everything that David Lagana was not doing, Maureen was doing. And when it came to tickets and taking the brunt of some a-hole's abuse, when ticket sales were weird, or if I felt so bad for her. I remember when the Cornette thing happened initially, like there was a segment of the audience that would disagreed with the stuff, and they were just like saying the most awful trash to her about that whole situation. It's just terrible, but she handled it like a pro. Like I can't say enough about Maureen, I guess is what I'm trying to say here. And so any position, I would support her in that. Like she is a fantastic person. And she actually made a post on Twitter that I'd love to shine some light on. She mentioned her one comment on this whole thing so far is something that we should all keep in mind, and that she just said basically in regards to everything that's gone on this past weekend, the NWA is not one person. It never has been one person, and it is a group of people that make this thing happen. So, and that's 100% true. And that's the big thing when people acted like, and I saw this all over online, that because of this one incident, the NWA, like, what's going to happen? It's going to fall apart. And I kind of just looked at it like, man, you have no idea, like, how many talented people, Rob just dropped that in. I mean, there are so many people that are talented in the NWA, not only the backstage, the people that come in from GPB Studios that work with them. I mean, one man does not make that thing happen. It is a team effort, and these people take on multiple jobs and have many talents. So there is no lack of ability in the NWA roster and behind the scenes. So that's why I'm like kind of confident about it. Like I'm not even that worried about what happens from here as far as the company. We just stay the course and hope that this whole thing hasn't shaken Mr. Corrigan too much, that he's just, like, I am sure that William Patrick Corrigan is not in the best place right now. I would have to imagine. I don't know the guy personally. I've not had any conversations with him. I'm just saying, I think that something like this going down probably makes you have to take a step back and think about a lot of things. And given that time, I'm confident that he's going to reach the understanding that his team is much more than one man, and he has put together quite the group of people. Hell, even the wrestlers. I mean, outside of their wrestling ability, there is not another company that is like the National Wrestling Alliance with, as far as its talent, that is regularly out there, putting themselves out there on social media and getting themselves over and making content for themselves. It has been so impressive during this quarantine or this pandemic time in our lives to see all of these people step up and keep their names in the public. And it's just, it's been a blast to watch, honestly. It's just so many different things. And you've seen some of it in Carneyland. And I mean, you talk about Camille and Thunder Rosa. Those two ladies have stepped up like nobody's business. It's like Thunder Rosa's channel is constantly flowing with stuff, and it's not even related to Carneyland. It's just Thunder Rosa being Thunder Rosa and motivated to excel and succeed. And you can't ask for more than that. There's nothing about this. This is the scrappy underdog company that you believe in, and nothing about that is changing for me. I went on another rant. I apologize.
You're good. You're good. I will mention one thing that in the chat, and we've mentioned it too, about David Marquez. I think WWE Front Row said it in the chat. David Marquez would obviously be a great fit, but based on the conversation we had with him, I mean, he's got a lot going on. I don't know if that's, I don't know if he would want to step into that role. He seemed really comfortable with his current role as an on-screen personality with the NWA. I don't know that he would want to take on more because he's got so much going on with championship wrestling and things like that. But, and I don't know if that would be the best fit, because I think somebody that is going to be focused on the NWA probably is going to be a better fit for that role. But I agree with you, Rob. I mean, the team approach, let's divide and conquer. Let's, segment some things out, because it's kind of one of those things where, and my wife and I talk about this a lot, but just because you can do something doesn't mean you should. And there's this tendency in culture to, if somebody can do a bunch of different things, just let them do it. But we see that that's not always the best approach. Sometimes it's good to divide and conquer, to divide it out and let some other people step in. And as you've mentioned, Rob, in all those names, I mean, there's a lot of really talented people in different areas of the NWA. And this may be a way to push the NWA into this next chapter where, different people are able to step up and fill this one role, multiple people, and have a chance to shine, have a chance to kind of put their fingerprint and their stamp on the NWA product and what's going on moving forward. So I'm intrigued by that take, Rob. I hadn't even thought about that. And that's a great idea. I would love to see that happen, to where it's not just, they come out and say, here's one name that is going to fill, and maybe they have to fill the position, per se, but I would love to see a lot more people take ownership of various aspects of production and booking and all this kind of stuff, just to see some division of labor that might, give other people a chance to shine.
Right.
Fuzzy Wubbles, am I saying that right? In the chat right now, dropping the name Dutch Mantel. That's a blast from the past. I mean, not even really like the past necessarily. Dutch has been in and out of the wrestling business for a while now, even in the modern era. And that's an interesting idea. I saw Freddie Prinze Jr. pop up in there too, for what that's worth. So, I don't know if everybody's 100% serious, but I did want to point out too, just to compound the thing I was mentioning before, Wrestling with the MMA, just bringing up an idea about how like Homicide is took on a producer role, an agent role or whatever in the NWA. That's the thing I'm talking about. Those guys that stepped up, the stories we heard about guys like Homicide and Trevor Murdoch, that just, those were jobs that they came in to do. They just took it on. Tim Storm, even, that kind of thing. God, can you imagine Vice President Tim Storm, by the way? Just saying. But anyway, we want to just remind everybody, by the way, if you haven't already, make sure you hit the subscribe button down there. We're going to try to double down on content and make sure that you guys are getting fed NWA stuff constantly. We love you guys, and we want to keep this family strong. You guys are everything that's going to make the NWA come back better than ever. So yeah, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button if you haven't already. Follow the show. It's at the NWA Pod on everything. Folks, did you have anything else to talk about as far as what's causing all this, or did you want to jump into this inside the NWA discussion that we had, the Cardi Land Patreon discussion? That's going to go down a rabbit hole, so I'm just trying to preface before we get there.
Let's go.
All right. Well, Mount Rushmore. That's the thing. That's what we're talking about here. I mean, if you listen to the episode of Inside the NWA, it's discussion on who would be the Mount Rushmore of the National Wrestling Alliance. I mean, I don't care if the discussion rolls into just wrestling in general, but the National Wrestling Alliance, we saw a bunch of different discussions. Rob, you were on the Patreon discussion. I wasn't able to make it, but the Cardi Land Town Council discussion about the Mount Rushmore situation. What did you see there that stood out to you, as far as like, what were some names that you saw thrown around, and any surprises there that you found, or was there a consensus? Did you guys finally nail down a specific floor and the production has begun?
Well, I don't think that everybody was quite aware of what the criteria were. If you remember on the Inside the NWA YouTube video, if you look in the description, the requirement was that you had to have held a world's championship. It doesn't say singles; it could be tag team. But when we were in the Patreon discussion, you had people throwing around names like Adrian Street was thrown out. No shade on Adrian Street, but he never held the title. Roddy Piper. You had guys that I think have certainly a case to be made, like a Gordon Soley or a Lance Russell or a Jim Crockett. All those names across the various different levels of NWA production, development, promotion, and so forth. But when we're talking about the Mount Rushmore, we're talking about world's champions, the people who have risen to the mountaintop, literally. And there seemed to be some agreement, some consensus over a couple of names. and then there was some open discussion about others, but most everybody seemed to agree that Ric Flair should be on there. I think that was the universal name. And then most people agreed that Lou Thez or Harley Race or one of the two should be there. I represented This Is the NWA Podcast, and I cast our vote in favor of Ric Flair, Lou Thez, Harley Race, and Mildred Burke. Mildred Burke is the great world's women's champion who was identified with that championship for about 25 years. In fact, one of our good friends, J. Cal, recommends that we call the women's belt the Burke because it's modeled after her title, and she should receive that recommendation. Interestingly, there's Gutzon Borglum was the man who did Mount Rushmore, and there's been a lot of discussion about whether or not he intended to throw a fifth face on there because I don't know if you know this, but the Mount Rushmore was to represent the birth, growth, development, and preservation of the United States, which is why you have, Washington, Jefferson, Lincoln, and then Roosevelt on there. There was supposed to be a fifth face that was never finished. We don't know if that's true or not, but I always thought if there should have been a fifth face, then that face should go to a modern representative, and then you have to look at an Adam Pearce or really a Nick Aldis. Adam Pearce has done great work, and he'd certainly be an honorable mention. But when you are a man who's held the title during your second reign, you've already exceeded where Flair was at in his second reign. And what I mean by that is, like, Ric Flair, when he was in his second reign at this point, was already 4 years older than Nick Aldis, and at that point was already being discussed as one of the greatest world champions of all time. So I don't think it's too early to start to talk about Nick Aldis as being one of the greats. So if you ask me, there was certainly a consensus on Flair, and more or less Race and Lou Thez. There were people that threw Dory Funk Jr. in there, and there's a lot of, there should be some consideration to that. He held that title for like 4 years, was a great champion. He only held it once though, but I don't think that you can have a credible Mount Rushmore without Mildred Burke on there, without the quintessential women's champion who paved the way for a Thunder Rosa and an Allison Kay. And then if there's going to be a fifth face, you got to put the guy who rebirthed the promotion, or took it to new heights and is sustaining it and elevated it to international prominence again. You have to consider Nick Aldis.
I agree.
I think I'm with you. I think I was. Oh, go ahead, Will. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was just gonna mark my stamp of approval on everything that the good doctor just said, because that was very well said, well thought through, and you were an honorable representation of the show.
I agree. We couldn't have a better representative go in there and talk about it. I think I was one of the people that brought up Dory Funk, by the way. I appreciate what he's done. I actually saw his name. There were a lot of names, I'm going to be honest, I piggybacked on that I saw somebody bring up, and then I started thinking about him a little bit more. Rob, you were one of them with Mildred Burke. Like, it's a sad day that I did not think of that myself, but is absolutely somebody that should be considered. And on top of that, I think the champ himself, Nick Aldis, like when he was forced to pick, I think his were Thez, Race, Flair, and Dory. I believe those are the ones he said. I saw WWE Front Row in the chat discussing Flair, Race, Pierce, and Aldis. So he got those modern representatives in there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I do like the idea that you represent different generations of wrestling. I saw J. Cal, our friend over at the Alliance blog. He mentioned he threw in, Adam Pearce we see a lot, but he actually mentioned Dan Severn, saying that if Dan Severn had not held the NWA World's Heavyweight Championship, there would not be an NWA today to talk about. He was pretty strong on that. I don't even think like Dan Severn's his favorite champion. I think he just feels as though Severn held it and kept it alive at a moment where it was on the brink. And so I thought that was an interesting discussion there. So
I like Severn. I like Severn, and I'm not one to debate with J. Cal. This guy knows his stuff, and I love J. Cal. We're good friends. But this is when we get into those kind of speculations, it's hypothesis contrary to fact. We don't know what would have happened if Severn hadn't have held the belt. My suspicion is that promotion would have gone on and someone else would have held it. It just so happened that as history worked out, he happened to hold the UFC and the NWA titles at the same time. No one planned that. It didn't work at that. He did go out there on WWF with the 10 pounds of gold on a WWF show. But J. Cal also suggests that Ric Flair should not be on the Mount Rushmore. And to me, that's like, I can't. There's no one else from 1984 to 1988 who epitomized professional wrestling than Ric Flair. So, I almost I'd say 96% of the time I agree with J. Cal. But I think he's wrong about Severn. Severn was good, but he's not one of the greats. And Flair is one of the greats and is the essential Mount Rushmore face. He is the essential Mount Rushmore face. And I think everybody in the NWA fam needs to get in the habit of calling the women's title the Burke. That's a J. Cal recommendation. Just like we call the 10 pounds of gold Sweet Charlotte. All of us who are in the fam, we need to start calling that women's belt the Burke. That's that needs to happen.
That's actually a really good idea, and I didn't mean to. I meant to comment on that because I think I could be wrong, but I feel pretty strongly that I'd have to go back and listen. But even when I got a chance to interview Allison Kay, she said that she asked for that belt, and specifically because she is a fan of Mildred Burke, and that's when they were talking to her about a championship. That design was. Something in that vein was exactly what she requested from Mr. Corrigan. And so that was delivered. And so I don't think you'd find any one of the talent that would have a problem with that belt being referred to as the Burke. So henceforth, if I had a gavel, we would do that, but it's settled. Hashtag NWA fam. This belt is henceforth known as the Burke. Chat, you can make that happen on social media and everywhere else.
Carneyland is under emergency jurisdiction right now. We've decreed as the High Council that it's called the Burke.
We've also apparently decreed ourselves as the High Council.
We're nothing if not humble. No, I will say I really feel like it's important that I establish that for myself too right now, that I agree with that, so that I can say this. J. Cal really said he didn't think that Flair was supposed to be on the Mount Rushmore of the NWA, because that seems like he is smoking some stuff.
He did.
I don't get that.
Well, and he wasn't throwing shade on Flair, but he did say that. He said that on last Tuesday night show, then when he was discussing Mount Rushmore, he's like, this is going to come as a surprise to people, but I would put this person, I would put Race, I'd put Dory, but he wouldn't have put Flair on there, and he'd have put Severn, but not Flair, and this is where J. Cal is personally invested in some people. This is a guy who knows these guys. He knows Severn. He's had conversations with Adam Pearce. He has relationships with them, and there's some attachment there, and there's no devaluing their. Now, also understand too that. And I don't want to sound melodramatic here, but J. Cal's perspective is he's coming from the perspective of Moses. J. Cal is Moses. He is the most important podcast voice in the NWA family, no doubt. We will all acknowledge that. And
Jesus, tell us how you really feel, Rob.
Yeah. For many years, he was alone. I mean, there were people like, I was watching, but I wasn't savvy to technology, and I definitely wasn't listening to podcasts. So when he was out there in those wilderness years, he gave, he values those faces that sustain the company and the brand, like a Severn and an Adam Pearce. But I don't think that Severn was all that important. I mean, I think it was cool, but I think that if it had not been Severn, the NWA would have had another face. There would have been another person. He had that long sustained title reign, but honestly, his ring work, he worked like an MMA fighter. He never worked, he worked like a traditional Greco-Roman wrestler. He didn't work like a professional wrestler. He was more in line with an old Orville Brown, an old Vern Gagne, a Matt-style wrestler who's going to have you in a headlock for 2 hours. And that's not the kind of thing that at least in the modern, and by modern I mean 1973 to the present, in the modern perception and conception and reception of what pro wrestling ought to be, Severn doesn't epitomize that. But I respect what he's saying. I get it, man. For him to hold the NWA belt and the UFC belt simultaneously, that's huge. But it wasn't necessary. NWA would have gone on. If it weren't for Severn, someone else would have done it.
Well, and that brings up the question, I guess, where I'm coming from is like, you know, what in you guys' mind is the main criteria for being on the Mount Rushmore? Is it in hindsight, looking at what they did for specifically the NWA? Is it their in-ring work? Is it their title run? You know, there's a lot of different approaches you can take to that. And so, like, for you guys, what would be your primary factor in that?
3, 1, that you hold the title. 2, that your reign is a quality reign, meaning it's sustained over time. You have more wins and losses. And 3, that your reign is characterized by big wins. And it just so happened that during Dan Severn's reign, that was a very vibrant time. This was right before Adam Pearce was really becoming big, but it was a low time in terms of quality of opponents. So that's why Dan Severn wouldn't make the list. He had a very long reign. He held the title for multiple years. But look at Adam Pearce, though. See, to me, Adam Pearce has a greater claim because he was defending the belt against legitimate world-class caliber opponents, where Dan Severn, you know, he was competing on a world-class level, but not in the NWA, in UFC, and these various other promotions. But the NWA wasn't defended as the premier title against world-class opponents. So for me, there's 3 criteria. You have to have held the belt. You have to have a sustained reign, and that's subjective, but a lengthy reign, whatever that means in your time period. And that reign has to be characterized by quality wins over world-class opponents. Look at an Aldis, he meets all of those. Ric Flair meets all of them. Adam Pearce meets all of them. Dory Funk meets all of them. Harley Race, obviously. Luthez, you know, they meet all of those. Dan Severn doesn't meet those. He doesn't meet those qualifications. You like Mike Rapata. Rapata was active in those days. That's not a world. No shade on anybody who held the belt, but that's not, you know, he's not up there as, you know, he would not hold a candle to Nick Aldis, him being at his best in his prime against Nick Aldis in his prime.
Now, I do have a question about that for myself. Is one thing that I was thinking about, I mean, all of those factors that you're mentioning are very valid. One thing that I was considering was, what about like influence, or as far as importance of their position? So I mentioned that potentially, you know, like you said, a fifth face. I mentioned that I would think that Nick Aldis is in that discussion. And I got a lot of pushback for that. I don't think as any shade towards Nick Aldis, but I think that it was just that he hasn't earned it yet. And a lot of people felt that way, that he had a lot of work to do. Even our friend Bruce Mitchell over at Pro Wrestling Torch came in and said you know, he had his opinion on these things, but he was saying like, Mr. Aldis is great, but he's got a ways to go still before that's the case. And but my initial factor, besides him being a champion and a great champion, I think, and a long reigning champion, was that Nick Aldis has been the leading factor, arguably the main factor in the rebirth of the National Wrestling Alliance into the mainstream. And so I think that that's going to matter eventually. So 2 questions for you guys I would ask would be, do you think that's a valid, not the Nick Aldis thing necessarily, but do you think that's a valid factor to consider? Also, too, Rob, I would say, you know, you mentioned holding the title. Now, does it have to be, well, I guess it doesn't. You mentioned Mildred Burks. I was going to ask, does it have to be the World's Championship? Because what would you say to someone like, I saw in some people's votes, like the Rock and Roll Express or the Midnight Express, like those guys, like where do they fall into this?
Well, they're world champions. You know, they held. I don't think that a singles champion has to be. I mean, there can be multiple Mount Rushmores, but when we're talking about the person who carried the company, I don't think that you can wrestling. And I see Mr. Rosa, who I respect the world out of. I love the Rosa family, man. They are fam, and he's saying it shouldn't have to be an NWA champion. But I'm thinking, well, what's the alternative? Because the NWA champion is the one who is the face of the company. And when we're talking about the Mount Rushmore of a company that has existed since arguably 1905, and even arguably before that, how are you going to narrow it down to 4 or 5 people who weren't world champions? Like, who is your alternative to one of the 4 or 5 great world champions that there have been? There have been great people not to hold the title. I think of Roddy Piper. I think of Scott Hall. I think of Magnum TA. But to get to that pinnacle, and I think of guys who weren't even active in the ring, like a Gordon Soley or a Paul Ellering or a Jim Crockett or a Stu Sachs, even, who is, in publications and all that. But to me, we're talking about wrestling. We're talking about workers. We're talking about people who do the sport of wrestling. And over the course of, let's just put it 1905. If you want to argue that date, that's fine. We can just back it up to 1948, Orville Brown, for argument's sake. From 1948 to 2020, we've got to narrow this down to 4 or 5 things, 4 or 5 personalities, and those 4 or 5 are not going to have held the world title. I want to know the argument against that, because I can't think of any person, I don't care if it's Roddy Piper, Scott Hall, or Magnum TA, who surmounts a Luthez, Ric Flair, Mildred Burke, Ricky or Robert, because in my book, they're world champions. A Legion of Doom Road Warriors, a Midnight Express, they're world champions. So I don't know, does that make sense, or did I go off base there?
No, that makes sense. I mean, it's you look at the real Mount Rushmore. I mean, it's presidents, not their staff, cabinet members and things like that, even though those are people that are making things happen politically. So, I mean, that makes sense. I mean, when you think of, but you just kind of opened up a whole new can of worms for me, bringing up tag teams, because you guys know how I feel about tag team wrestling. I love it. And man, Legion of Doom, Midnight Express, those guys, like, for me, when I think back on the history of the NWA, those guys, I mean, like you said, they weren't singles champions, but that was such a vibrant part of the NWA and such an intrigue. And I mean, we talk about it a lot. At the end of the day, the World's Championship is the prize. So it is hard to disconnect yourself when you're having this conversation from the fact that everyone's face up there should have been the world's champion or the women's world champion, because that's the top prize in the company. And I see where you land on there, but it does get my mind going, thinking about tag teams. I think about the draw that those tag teams had, the impact that they had on the business and on the company. I mean, maybe there's a tag team Mount Rushmore with 8 faces or something. I don't know.
Brian Rose is in the chat talking about Paul Pinky George, who basically created the NWA, was like the driving force behind it. I mean, right. So if you're talking about that is a factor too to think about. So I get why Rob would have.
I appreciate that, Mr. Rose. I do. But remember, Paul Pinky George didn't create a promotion to just like celebrate promoters. It's a promotion of wrestlers. And so we're celebrating wrestlers here. And I think this is not taking away from anybody who has had any instrumental part. I mean, maybe one day they'll be saying, man, the Mount Rushmore, you should have Will, Rob, and Gary on there. But we're not workers. We're here to elevate the brand in wrestling. And so Pinky George created the NWA not to celebrate Pinky George. He created it to celebrate Orville Brown, and so I think, when we're talking about wrestling, we're talking about wrestlers and not managers, not ring valets, not promoters, not announcers, not presidents, not executives. All those have a role to play and they're very important. But when we're talking about the Mount Rushmore, you have to talk about champions. I don't see it any other way. In a promotion that dates back to 1905, you cannot whittle it down to 5 people and those 5 not be world champions. You can't.
I switched this thing to gallery view so that everybody could see all 3 of us at the exact same time and envision a Mount Rushmore with our 3 faces on it. Now, I don't know if there's rock hard enough to get these beards, but I'm certainly open to people trying.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, Rob, you said a lot of good things there, but I just want to publicly accept your nomination to be part of the NWA Mount Rushmore. I hope the voters will agree when the time comes that the three of us should be there.
Brian Rosa's point goes back. I think, I mean, I'm not trying to take away from what Mr. Rosa is saying in the chat. Was kind of, I think we're on the same page somewhat with like one of those factors being he's saying, I don't think it's all about celebrating wrestlers in my eyes. It's who did the most for the company. So I feel like that's in the discussion. And also, Rob, I'm not taking away from me because I definitely see exactly what you're saying too. And you got to have some factor that narrows this thing down, because you could argue all day about who, when you pulled out that Jenga piece, would make the whole tower collapse. So it's like it's an interesting discussion to have. I did like this will be a fun exercise. I did like that Dave Scooby in the chat brought up, all right, the Mount Rushmore is one world champion, one women's champion, and one tag team. So what is that? What do you guys think on if you get one from each category?
I would say Flair, Mildred Burke, and the Midnight Express, just for me. That would be mine.
That's a good, and I can't disagree with you, but just for the sake of, just to play devil's advocate, I'm going to say Flair, Mildred Burke, and the Legion of Doom, the Road Warriors. The only team to hold the AWA, WWF, NWA, and International Wrestling Grand Prix tag titles. The Big Four.
Listen to this historical knowledge. I was all on board with Will's pick until you brought the Road Warriors into it. I can't believe I hadn't thought of them before, but there's a thing called the Road Warrior Pop for a reason. So I think I'm going to go with probably, I'll say Flair, and then God, I was going to do a question mark, but he hasn't held a belt yet. So
he's got, what are you talking about? He's got 10 belts. He's got 10 black belts. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
Where are you?
Yeah. So Flair question. Wait, no, we need a women's champion. So let's piss off Brian Rosa and say Allison Kay question mark and the wild cards. There you go. That's my Mount Rushmore of all that, or at least the parking lot where you go to view the Mount Rushmore.
You're an idiot, man. I love you, but you're an idiot, dude.
Wow. All right. Let's see. Do you guys want to play a game that seems to be going on in the chat a little bit here right now? Is like what was going to happen at Crockett Cup 2020? That.
Sure, well, before we do, let's play that game. But again, because I have like the utmost respect for Brian Rosa, I really do. And I understand, I really do. He says, I don't think it's about celebrating wrestlers. In my eyes, it's who did the most for the company. I agree with you. And we celebrate those, but it is a wrestling company. It's a company of wrestlers. It's not a company of managers, promoters, valets, and executives. So yeah, there's a lot of, but you don't have talent. You can't promote anything if you don't have talent. And of course, talent can't be talent unless they're promoted. But for much of the history of the company, the talents were the promoters. And so I just can't buy a situation where there's a Mount Rushmore with any one of those folks didn't hold a world title. But much love, Brian Rosa. Crazy. I agree. I see what you're saying. And there's merit to what you're saying for sure. Much respect to your argument.
I get that you love Brian Rosa. Like, I feel like you're scared to argue with him. Like, you're like,
I'm not scared of him. I'm scared of Thunder Rosa.
We all know there is love between Doc Stinson and Brian Rosa. I mean, this is if he says it one more time after dark, is going to turn into a whole different show.
Me and Brian Rosa play Fortnite together, man. We're good, but Thunder, she's a little sensitive about this.
One great way to know that Rob is about to really disagree with you is if he starts by saying how much he loves you and respects you.
Look, Will, I love you, bro. I think we can all.
Brian Rosa did do. He did throw a fun thing in the chat that I like. So let's run to it real quick too. Power, NWA Power era only. Can't go pre. Who is the Mount Rushmore now?
Oh, that's a good one.
Oh man, I actually got to think on that a little longer.
Wrestlers, because we only have 2 champions, so well 3, I guess, if you count Cody. No, Cody was not pre-Power.
Or he was pre-Power. Like that was Power. Power started during Aldis's second reign. So
obviously we're gonna say Aldis. So
yeah, I mean, I think Aldis is
the other 3 are up for debate, I guess, is what we're discussing.
Let me throw this out.
I think Tim Storm's in there, man. I think Tim Storm has to be a part of that.
I mean, Aldis, if you're talking strictly about Power, I mean that Aldis Tim Storm match, episode 1 was a cornerstone of NWA Power, so he's got to be included in that.
Now we're talking about post-Power here, so hear me out, okay? We're talking about, obviously, if we're dealing with 4 faces, we're not talking about 4 world champions because we've not had 4 world champions. So we've got to talk about now influence here. Influence and fan appeal. You might see where I'm going here, but I'm going to say Tim Storm. I'm going to say Allison Kay, the first women's champion. No shade on Thunder. I think Thunder will be there. Thunder Rosa is going to be one of the great women's champions. But as far as like we're talking about founding fathers here, I got Allison Kay, I got Tim Storm, I got Nick Aldis, and I got a toss-up either between Josephus and question mark.
You don't have Eli Drake on there?
No.
Okay.
Eli Drake came later, so.
I'm just shocked that you don't have Eli Drake on there, but that's.
No. He's on the. I'm not even gonna go there. I like Eli.
I was gonna get wild and say that I could see for myself making it like, especially if we're sticking to strictly wrestlers, I would have no problem with it being Tim Storm, Nick Aldis, Allison Kay, and Thunder Rosa. Like I feel like that's a fun way to go. Now I will say that another couple that comes to mind is the Rock and Roll Express, like having come through so many generations and also still taking the tag team titles in the NWA Power era. I feel like that's worth something, but I knew this was going to come up, but we've seen.
Gary. I agree. On hearing you say that, I'm going with my vote now is Tim Storm, Nick Aldis, Allison Kay, and Thunder Rosa. I agree with you. 2 men, 2 women. We have a vibrant women's division. Why do we feel like it just has to be 1 woman? I think Allison Kay and Thunder Rosa are tops in the world. They're better than any women out there, and I think they deserve their fair share. So I'm with you. I'm going Tim Storm, Nick Aldis, Allison Kay, and Thunder Rosa. That is the modern NWA Mount Rushmore.
I feel really good, like I'm accomplished now that the doctor agreed.
Yeah,
so
you changed his mind, dude.
I know that's. Yep. I don't think that's ever happened.
I dropped question mark off it, bro.
That's good. I'm seeing
black belt in Mongrovian karate.
No love for Zicky. I'm seeing that in the chat. Come on, what about Zicky Dice? I mean, I'd be interested just to see stone carved tongue, but other than that, I'm not feeling it for him quite yet.
Well, I was gonna say, I mean, we kind of left the TV title off that, but I think by nature that's part of it. I mean, no disrespect. I mean, I love the TV title. You guys know that. I'm an Arn Anderson guy, so that title holds a lot of prestige for me. But I just don't think at this point in NWA Power we've seen someone step into that title. And Ricky Starks was great. Zicky Dice is getting there, but to not nobody's reached the Mount Rushmore level with that title. Like an Arn Anderson or someone like that did. So that it's just for that, it's just a matter of, it came onto the scene a little late and it was less established people.
Ricky didn't have 7 successful title defenses, and Zicky is yet to have a title defense. So they're just not, I mean, they're good. I love them both, man, but they're not in the discussion.
I'm having a blast here. I think this is a lot of fun having these talks with everyone. So Brian Rosa winning over the love fest between Brian Rosa and the Doc is getting disgusting, just to be honest with you. But he just made a vote for Aaron Stevens and how much he's done for Power. So you
Brian, I love you, man. I love Brian Rosa.
God, here we go.
I'm kidding. I do love Brian Rosa, but he makes a good point. Aaron Stevens, third degree national champion. Funny, was here from the beginning, so he's right.
Well, I mean, some names that we haven't mentioned, not champions, but yeah, Eddie Kingston. I was just thinking of another one. Who was it?
Homicide.
Was it D-Man Dan Parker?
Oh, Sal Renaro. We haven't talked about him.
Question Mark Jr. Remember him?
Oh, God.
From the Mongrovian forest, wearing in at 490 Mongros.
Yeah.
You can't forget him.
Chad Reese is gonna whip our tails if we do not mention James Storm in here. He is throwing in James Storm.
That was the one I was.
He is throwing in James Storm, the Cowboy, and multiple times. He's like, somebody talk about the damn Cowboy, James Storm. So there you go, Chad. We're talking about James Storm. Hey man, I love James Storm. Like, I think he seems like a legit cool guy, and he's a lot of fun to watch. I just don't. I mean, if we're talking Power Mount Rushmore, I don't know that James Storm's. Well, I guess he is the tag team co-holder of the tag team titles right now, but it's just it's a tough call. Like, I don't know if he's had the success. It's tough. I mean, he's main evented a pay-per-view in the Power era, and so I feel like I'm arguing with myself here. But I don't know. Something about him's not clicking for me as far as a Mount Rushmore in the modern NWA.
Yeah, James Storm is great, man. He's a former Impact World Champion. He is a multi-time NWA World Tag Champion back in the NWA TNA days. He is great. But for Power, it's kind of like Josephus. Josephus, to me, is one of the most important guys in the modern day rebrand of the NWA, but he's not yet materialized in the Power era. And James Storm he's wearing championship gold. They've got a good thing going. He and Eli Drake, they're a credible title. He had a great match with Nick Aldis, but he does not yet have that signature win. And I don't, they've not defended the tag titles to the level yet that warrants, Rushmore status. But you could make a case for James Storm. I mean, I'd be interested to hear it. As we always say, we're teachable here. And James Storm is one of the greats. And, outside of the NWA, he has an established pedigree as a world-class guy. And who knows what's going to happen. This is another guy that I always thought could be a good, Magnum TA type foil to Nick Aldis. He's one that they had that great Into the Fire, that great match, man, a great match. And they had a match before that. I think during the Aldis Crusade, they had a match. And, man, it was stuff. So it could get to that where he elevates himself to, I hate to say the top baby because I don't believe in babies and heels in the NWA, but so much, but he could become that Magnum TA guy where I always kind of envisioned Eli Drake filling in that role. But, it remains to be seen. James Storm, no shade on him. He's got some stuff to do, but he's a great guy. I love him. He's entertaining to watch. He's a good worker in the ring. He's held titles. He's holding an important title now, so we'll see.
So we see some discussion there, Rob, about the NWA. Gosh, there's so much going on. Sandoval as the Crazy Horse Memorial. Seeing that in there. Let's see here. Colt Boom Boom Cabana. Come on, get out of here. And let's see here. Coolman 952 thinks that the NWA needs more tag teams. Do we agree with that? Peter Peckney says NWA should be known for the tag division. That would be awesome. Do we feel like the NWA has enough tag teams? There should be more. Where are you guys landing on that right now?
I mean, I'm always down for more. I like true blue tag teams. I mean, you know, and this is no knock on Eli and James Storm, but I just have always preferred, you know, Road Warriors, Midnight Rock and Roll Express, you know, true tag teams, not just two singles guys that come together and win a title. So, and you know, don't know where everything's going to land when wrestling actually starts back, but I would love to see some more established, you know, branded tag teams in the NWA and kind of liven up that division a little bit. I'm all for that.
Yeah. And again, James Storm is one of the, you know, he's one of the great tag team wrestlers ever in our lifetimes, in any of our lifetimes. He's held the tag belts multiple times in NWA, TNA. But I'm with you, Gary. I mean, Will. I can always use more tag teams. When you think about it, who do we have in the NWA? We've got Eli and James Storm, the Rock and Roll Express, if you consider them, and you got the Wild Cards. And maybe I'm leaving somebody out. I probably am, but what about drawing in the Briscoes, Villain Enterprises, some of those organizations? You know, what about the NWA has always, like, the one thing that set them apart, aside from everything. I mean, they you know, everything they can compare with any entity when it comes to any level. But we were always a tag team organization, from the Midnight's Rock and Roll Express to Freebirds to, you know, the Russians to, you know, Sergeant Slaughter, Don Colonel, the Briscoes, Steamboat, and Jay Strongbow. I mean, we've always been known. We've had the greatest tag teams of all time come to the NWA. I think Eli and James Storm can be one of those. Obviously, Ricky and Robert are one of those. But yes, right now, the tag team scene is thin, and we need more tag teams. We absolutely need more tag teams. I would love to see us sign the Briscoes.
Yeah, you know, they've been such a focal point of a Ring of Honor. I don't know that would ever happen, but it'd be awesome. But yeah, I'm with you. And you know, looking at it in perspective, I mean, the NWA is in the process of growing to, you know, accommodate more talent, to expand the roster and things like that. And I'm sure down the road we'll see that. It's obviously a weird time now with the pandemic and what's happening currently. But talking long term, I would see that tag team division being very vibrant. I would see them, as I mentioned before, bringing guys up and branding them as a tag team, or bringing in other established tag teams that fit that mold of just solid, pure professional wrestling, much like those teams that you just mentioned. I mean, you know, there's also the Horsemen. I mean, Arn and Ole Anderson and different variations there going back through time that made for really great tag teams. You know, we mentioned the Road Warriors. I've just always been a fan and been intrigued with solid, good tag team wrestling, not this. And yes, James Storm is an accomplished tag team wrestler, but not necessarily with Eli Drake. So that's not like an established tag team in my mind. It's just two guys who can do tag team wrestling pretty well. And so I would love to see more, you know, Road Warriors type, Midnight Rock and Roll Express type tag teams that are able to just focus primarily on those tag belts, elevate those tag belts, because those should be, you know, those tag belts should be elevated the same way that, you know, the world's title and the women's world title are, as in that's the best tag team in the world, you know. And so I would love to see that be really embodied.
Yeah, my man Chad Rice pointed out the Dawsons. I forgot to mention them. I was big on the Dawsons. Of course, they lost that loser leaves town match, so they're in hiatus. And then Cool Man 952 mentioned Aaron Stevens and Question Mark, who do tag together from time to time, but they're not functionally a tag team. So you know, we've got to shore up the tag team division. We can always use more tag teams for sure, no doubt.
I imagine it's tough, just like, you know, as far as like how much you can have on the roster. But again, the NWA makes for a great place for people in and out regularly. I'm with Will that I always thought all the champions should be elevated. I mean, obviously the 10 pounds of gold is the granddaddy, but it's like like everybody should be able to hold a show on their own if you're going to be a champion, which I will give credit for the NWA, because I felt like I'm not 100% sure that they ever got as much credit as they should have gotten. That those shows, I mean, literally the World's Heavyweight Championship only headlined a fraction of those shows. Where you're watching something like a WWE show, their world champions got a main event every week. But the NWA, Nick Aldis main evented a lot of shows, but you might have an episode of Power that's headlined by the tag team title or the women's championship. And so I always thought that was a cool thing about them. It never leaned on any one champion at any point. And I always appreciated that about them.
Yeah, we didn't mention Kingston and Homicide either, I don't think. But those, I mean, that's a legitimate tag team. But yeah, I'm with you. I like, because, and this is my only beef with Eli and James Storm, is that those guys, since, coming up through Power, those guys have primarily been individually focused on the world's title. They've had a number of promos, a number of, James Storm was in a world's title match. So those guys have been focal points as individuals, and now it just feels like, oh, we'll just put them together and put the belts on them. That's what I'm talking about. Like, if they had come in as a tag team and kind of like the Wild Cards did and had been established as a tag team, that would be a different story. So that's what I want to see more of.
Mm-hmm.
I am impressed, I will say, with how well Eli Drake and James Storm gelled, though. They got really quickly into a groove as a tag team. I will give them props there, like look-wise, and they felt legit. Like, they felt like a real tag team, and you're talking about two top single stars in there. It was pretty impressive. Where do you guys land on just going back to something that was earlier in the chat? I'm curious. What did you think was going to happen at Crockett Cup 2020? Did you feel like Aldis was going to retain? Where do you feel like that was headed? I mean, obviously, things could still pick back up, but I'll just go first to give you an example of what I'm thinking of. Like, I think somebody asked me this before, and I was like, I think the momentum was in Scurll's favor going into that show, and there was a good possibility that Marty Scurll could have won the 10 pounds of gold. Were you to start back up tomorrow? No chance. Like, I think there's no way that anybody's ready to hold that title except Nick Aldis. And by the way, that prediction is not saying I feel like that was the right call. I just felt like that's the way the wind was blowing at the time, but I could be wrong. Where do you guys land on that?
Well, Gary, I just want you to know that Rob loves you. He respects you. And now I'm going to let Rob give his take.
Gary, you're a damn fool. Ain't no Marty Scurll in the world was ever going to beat Nick Aldis, ever. It wasn't going to happen. It ain't going to happen now. It's not going to happen at Crockett Cup 2021. It was never going to happen. Marty Scurll is not big enough. He's not good enough. He's not talented enough. He's good. He's talented, but he's not good enough and not talented enough to beat Nick Aldis. It wasn't going to happen. I tweeted, man. I tweeted the night I bought my tickets. I said, one day, 25 years from now, my daughters will look back and brag about the day my dad took me to see Nick Aldis bury Marty Scurll. And it would have happened that night. And then the Crockett Cup. The Crockett Cup. I know who was going to win the Crockett Cup. It wasn't going to be the Rock and Roll Express. It wasn't going to be James Storm and Eli Drake. It was going to be a tag team who had not yet been invited. A tag team circulating through the Southeast that goes by the name of the Jungle Kings, Lex Lee and Kevin Kaufman. They're the best tag team right now in wrestling. And they would have won an invitation, and they would have won the whole thing. They're up there with the Briscoes, but would Marty Scurll have beaten Aldis? No.
What about I feel like we were on the road to a Trevor Murdoch versus Aaron Stevens for the national title face off. You think Trevor would have knocked Stevens out? Let's put you on the spot there.
What's your question? Was Trevor going to beat Aaron Stevens?
It was pretty much, did Aaron Stevens have any shot in hell at beating Trevor Murdoch?
I guess The short answer to that is no. Trevor would not have beaten Aaron Stevens.
Doesn't get much shorter than that.
Rob, I love and respect you, but you're a damn fool.
Trevor Murdoch is to me, Trevor Murdoch is the next Dusty Rhodes. He will hold the national title. He will be the one. If it's not Eli Drake or James Storm, it's going to be Trevor Murdoch that's going to be the one that's on the horizon, as far as I can see, to challenge Nick Aldis. That's how much I hold Trevor Murdoch in high esteem. He is great. I like him. I don't see Trevor Murdoch as a long sustained champion. I see him as a very much like a Dusty Rhodes type transitional chasing the title champion. Someone who's going to hold the belt for 3 months and then drop it to Aldis again. I think Aldis, I'm not on Aldis mark. I mean, it's not like I'm in love with Aldis. I just think he's great. I think he's the greatest wrestler in the world. And I think he's built to, I think he's built to be the champion for a long time or for many, many times. But Trevor Murdoch is too. Trevor Murdoch is built to wrest the belt away, to hold it for 3 months, to drop it again, and then win it again a couple more times. So I think the world of Trevor Murdoch. As far as I'm concerned, he's the next Dusty Rhodes.
I love Rob throwing in there that he's not in Aldis mark. It's funny to hear you put Aldis over, like cushioned on either side by like 10 pounds of BS. Like you just, I would never crawl right up Nick Aldis's ass, but if it's available.
I didn't wake up one day and say, like, man, this guy's like so handsome and so Yeah, he is handsome. He is charismatic. I don't have to be a mark for Nick Aldis. Nick Aldis earned my respect. He is.
I'm not a mark, but I'll make everybody participate in a 600 Days as Champion video as a love letter to the most beautiful wrestler that ever existed.
I didn't force anybody to do that. You guys all willingly comply. But the point is, I'm right, Gary. It's not like I'm giving like. I'm right. I'm not giving anything to him that he didn't earn. It's not like Ric Flair. Like I didn't wake up one day. It's like, oh, Ric Flair. I just love Ric Flair. Ric Flair earned it.
But here's the thing. And I'll come in as a tiebreaker here. Would it have not, the trajectory that it was on before everything happened, would it have not made the title more interesting to have a change with Skrull, with the way things were going, the prominence that he was appearing on Power, and that all that was happening, to have it, even if it was short, even if it was, Nick won it back on the next Ring of Honor pay-per-view or something, maybe that was the plan. But would that not have kind of been a shot in the arm for the title picture? Or, I know you love long reigns, but I mean, if you take yourself back to that point in time before lockdown and pandemic hit, would that not have been interesting?
Well, Will, I love you very much.
I don't know that. I don't know that.
You're my best friend, man. You and Gary are my best friends. I love you. But
wait, which one of us? You can only have one best friend. Choose now.
I take Natalia.
Me too. Me too.
No, it would not. In my book, it would not have, because for me, I don't think that Marty Scurll, I don't think he's a world champion in the NWA. I think he's an ROH world champion. He doesn't even hold their belt. So why are you even talking about this? You know what I'm saying? He doesn't hold their world title. He's not going to hold our world title. You know what I'm saying? Roosh holds their world title. Roosh. I mean, it's like, I don't, no, he's not. It would not make more sense.
Rob set him up for an ass whipping.
And it's like, to me, the title will change hands when the time is right, but it better be freaking important. And to me, Marty Scurll's cool. He and Nick Aldis are great. They had a great match at the first Crockett Cup. It's historic. But he's not on Aldis's plane, and it wouldn't have been that noteworthy other than the fact that Aldis lost it. Whoever takes the belt, it better be freaking important. So, and to me, Scurll's not that important. He's important, but he's not that important.
He loves and respects him, but he's not important.
I respect them. I don't love them. No, I do. I love and
Well,
respect.
we have a surprise guest. Gary, go ahead and let Marty scroll into the meeting.
Remember, ladies and gentlemen, Marty Skrull is here right now, jumping into the chat.
Marty, you're important, but
Marty
not that
Skrull,
important. What do you think?
I weigh more than Marty Skrull does. He's 5'3", weighs 160. I'm 5'9", 175 pounds, man. I can take Marty Skrull.
Well, I weigh more than both of
Jesus,
y'all.
I really
Say that.
I need.
I'm kidding. Marty, I'm just joking. Okay, them's jokes.
I'm gonna work my ass off to get Marty Skrull in this chat eventually.
Them just jokes.
If we could get Marty Skrull and or Eli Drake on this show, that would be the pinnacle at this point.
We've had the
We got whiskey on the show now. Forget
No,
it.
I'm saying the pinnacle in terms of getting Rob riled up. That would be the pinnacle.
Oh yeah, you're right, man. Just to it'd make our night easier, we could just lay back and let it go.
Start eating popcorn.
Just promos between Stinson and Drake. That'd be a lot of fun. Brian Rose is tossing out some crap into the chat about Thunder Rosa was going to be dropping the title to Melina. I don't know where that comes from, but I can't get by that.
I don't believe that either.
He's trying to get Rob riled up too.
Thunder Rosa. There is no planet in this solar system where Thunder Rosa drops the belt to Melina.
Not even Pluto.
Not even Pluto ain't even technically a planet because they voted it out, which I disagree with.
I know, that's why I brought
Peter
it up.
Payton talking about
That's why you brought it up. You went on a rant about Pluto earlier. So Rob's fired up. Rob is fired up tonight. So if you've got any controversial topics,
don't mess with Thunder Rosa. Don't mess with Nick Aldis. Those are my boos. I mean Thunder. Nick Aldis not so much my boo. That's my boy. But
I just want to let Rob talk a little bit longer just to see. Just remember before you go. Don't go on some rant about Thunder Rosa like you do about Nick Aldis. I mean, because her husband is in the chat. So you want to
Thunder Rosa is
cool.
Thunder Rosa is the epitome of what a great world champion should be. She brings the game, she brings the style, she brings the mystique, and there is no way in this galaxy that Melina beats her, or really anybody beats her for the belt for a long, long time. She's going to be one of those ones that we talk about a 400, 500, 600 day reign.
There's another video I got to make.
Now I made the video, bro. You, and it took me like y'all were the last two to throw y'all contributions in, man. Y'all two and J Cal of all people. Everybody else had their stuff in.
We wanted to get it right. It had to be good.
Well, you like to lay back and just see what everybody else is doing, so you can, one up that, just like elevate it here. And we wanted to make you squirm because you knew it wouldn't be legitimate if our voices weren't there.
You're right.
And I was just making sure that he made it to 600. I just wanted to make sure.
Hey, look at Brian Rosa's comment right in there.
What's Brian Rosa saying?
Saying
well, don't say it out loud. It could have been a surprise, you dingus.
It's on the live chat, bro. It's on the live chat. Piper just pointed it out to me, so whatever.
Listen, if I'm gonna do this trash, y'all got to keep the conversation going at least. There's not gonna be anything to join if y'all just sit there and stare at it.
Peter Peckney says to someone, he'd break your fingers. I'm assuming you're thinking like Marty Skrull would break my fingers, and I'm like, dude, no, he wouldn't. He wouldn't break my fingers. I've seen bigger opponents in Kosovo and Afghanistan than Marty Skrull. I'm not worried about no little old Marty Skrull.
Got him. He'd slap.
You told me to keep the conversation going on, so that's on y'all.
Well, now we're all just waiting in anticipation.
Yeah. Nah, Peter, you're right, bro. Marty Skrull, and a lot of people throwing Marty Skrull's name out there, and Marty Skrull is, to be respected. And would he have carried the belt with dignity and class? Yes, he would have. He would have been a good champion. And again, going back to Crockett Cup, Aldous and Marty had a match that I would consider a classic. They were talking on the Mount Rushmore discussion the other day about Aldous needing more benchmarks. And I'm like, he's got great benchmarks. And I would consider that Marty Scurll match to be one of those benchmarks. Marty Scurll is going to hold an NWA world title. Well, I'm not saying an NWA world title. He's going to hold a world title in some capacity. I just don't see him as in that league with a Nick Aldis right now, in all seriousness. He's just not, when we talk about like it being palatable or being credible, I don't see Marty as being big enough, talented enough, good enough worker to even to compare to Nick Aldis. Is he world-class caliber? Yeah, he is. But you got to look at the champion right now. Nick Aldis is world-class caliber cubed, exponentially. And so I just don't see it.
Well, and I'm thinking too, I mean, I just recently for the first time watched the 2019 Crockett Cup. And after seeing that match, it kind of changed my perspective on all that. I could see, the rematch with Scurll going over. And that's in terms of the in-ring and the storytelling that was happening on TV, that's why I said I could just see that happening.
Yeah. They had a great match, man. I mean, that just the banners, the prize fight atmosphere, just Nick Aldis just bleeding profusely. It was an epic match, man. And I have nothing. And we joke on here, guys. I have nothing but the utmost respect for Marty Scurll, and his relationship with Nick Aldis is one that's storied. And I feel like when they meet, I feel like they're really competing with each other. Like they're really they bring out the best in each other. I think we saw the best of Marty Scurll and the best of, oh my goodness. Let me stop what I'm saying because we got Lamera Mara in the house.
I was hearing your guys talk about me dropping the title to Melina while I was washing the dishes. I stopped cleaning my house. This is how important it is to keep things clear to everybody. Absolutely everybody. Starting with Melina, I am not dropping. It's not about dropping the title. Let's keep it clear. Next one, who people have been talking so much crap about, me dropping and being afraid of Camille. Let me keep this straight. I am not afraid of absolutely anybody. As you guys know, I train as a professional fighter, and I don't get in the cage being all scared. I'm not scared of absolutely no effing body. So let's keep it clear. I was not gonna drop the title to Melina, and I will never drop the title to Melina or Camille. They gotta earn their way, and Melina was easing their way in because of her name. That's it.
You're right, and Miss Rosa, hopefully you heard me tell these busters over here that there is no planet in this solar system where Thunder Rosa ever drops the belt to Melina or anybody else. We talking about
wait. Hold on a second. I think it needs to be established real quick that the only person who said that Thunder Rosa was dropping the belt to Melina was Brian.
Do it, Gary. Don't do it. Don't throw him under the bus.
You threw us under the bus. What are we supposed to do?
I just want y'all to know that I have been with Thunder Rosa. I have been on Team Thunder Rosa at the beginning, and she ain't dropping the belt to no damn buddy.
We agree. We agree with you.
Like what's happening here?
Right.
I have not said that Thunder. I called BS on it. It was Brian
Rosa.
Rosa
said that. When
said
Brian
that.
Rosa
Robert said it. Robert said it.
Y'all was over there shaking y'all's heads. Y'all was shaking y'all's heads. I see.
He got us, man. He was baiting us, and we mentioned it, and then
I don't know how we ended up with this
conversation. So I was washing the dishes, cleaning around here, taking care of Drago, and then I hear that, and I'm like, oh hell no! Like,
how the hell do you end up cleaning the house? I mean, what is Brian doing? What's Brian doing around there?
I imagine right now
you're the champ.
I imagine right now Brian's running into a closet or something.
No, Brian's over there watching Godzilla movies while the queen is doing dishes.
Folding clothes right now, listening to all of y'all talk. So.
Okay, well.
He's bored. He's like, let me stir something up and gets on the keyboard.
So this came out tonight, Miss Rosa. This came out tonight. We were talking about the Power Era Mount Rushmore, and the official NWA podcast Mount Rushmore is Tim Storm, Nick Aldis, Thunder Rosa, and Allison Kay. You're on it.
Well, I heard it was. I heard Allison, but then I stepped out of the room because I had to do things. But I appreciate that. I mean, unfortunately, because of all the situations with everything that has happened, I have not been able to defend my title. And some people say that you're not a champion if you can't defend the title, right? But I held and I hold this title. Sorry, I got a phone call. Somebody tried to. I denied it. What I was gonna say, man, I thought, no. I continue to do what a champion does, which is train, which is to show respect for the title and just to give more, the Burke belt. The what? The Burke belt. The Burke belt. Just to show that that I take this very serious. Very, very serious. Like this opportunity that was given to me, it's more than a prompt, and I think I've shown it many times with different things that I do in my personal life, as a professional wrestler and as a professional athlete. So, yeah, everybody can talk all the smack that they want about, me being a friend. I'm not afraid, I'm not afraid. People need to stop saying that.
Hey, tell us a little bit about while you're here, since you're giving us a little bit of your time, which we are grateful for. I mean, and I'm saying that I've thought that from the beginning, unlike Rob, who just like cowered like a beat dog as soon as you hopped on and just wanted to curl up in a ball.
Nah, she heard what I said. She heard what I said.
Tell us about Mission Pro. What are you guys doing over there? I saw the announcement and everything.
It's been like crazy. I don't even know when we announced it. Like I was literally like celebrating Brian for being, Father's Day. And then Drug, of course, always interrupting me when I'm trying to talk. We were talking and stuff, and then with the current situation and everything that has transpired in the last couple of days, we had Mission Pro and we only run one show, and then the COVID happened and we weren't able to do another one. But before we created Mission Pro, we created Sabotage Wrestling as a space for women in the West Coast to have a space to wrestle. Because let's be honest, it's 2020. And in every single state, I will say, there's only like spaces for women in a regular show, 1 or 2 matches, if we're lucky, 2 matches, And I saw that as a green girl, that a lot of the times there was no space for me to wrestle, and I wanted to create something for the girls so they can come and wrestle and be something that will highlight women's wrestling in the West Coast. So we created Sabotage in that aspect. Then we moved into the intergender wrestling, and what is happening right now, Brian has started thinking, you know what, I think it will be a really good idea if we, instead of just running a regular show, we start incorporating nothing but women in the show, and you will be, the owner. So it's starting from Booker, from the merchandise table, camera women, audio commentary, everybody that works there will have to be a woman. Referee, everybody. I don't think this has ever been done in the history of wrestling. There's been women's shows run by men, booked by men, and continue to be booked by men, but never by a woman or by women in general. So I think this is something that is needed and is different. And we are nothing but blessed. Like we have received so many positive messages, and a lot of people are willing to help, with their time, with their tech savvy, with everything. And it's just overwhelming for me because like we're still figuring it out, when we're going to run the show because of the COVID, where are we going to run the show, how many times we're going to run the show a year, who's going to be the people involved. Just let Drago come out because he's going to keep working. We're still working on our website because we were working on our website anyways. So we're trying to make something really, really positive, and where we allow women that have zero egos, that are not bullies, and that are there to support the new generations and teach them the ropes, which is the most important part. That we, as the new generation of veterans, teach them, the girls, the way that you can do things without stepping on other people to get where you need to get at.
Yeah, I'm happy to hear this. This sounds like an awesome idea, and you have our full support. Anything we can ever do to promote and help you guys get your names out there if we can offer anything, especially during this time. I do have to ask you, obviously I'm not going to ask you any specifics or anything, but are you guys doing okay over there? You feeling good? I mean, I know things have been upended this weekend, so you seem in good spirits. Are you feeling all right?
I have to be in good spirits. There's been a lot of stuff, that I read that has been said that, I just choose not to comment because it's hurtful, and it's something that, I'm trying to process, and we all do a process differently. Some of the ladies that were very courageous, they decided to speak up and share their own experiences. It was really sad when you read certain stuff and you're like, yep, I seen this. Yes, I've been there. Yes, this happened to me too, and it's just like, it's rough. It's really rough. And, like I said, I'm a person of actions. I really like to I see the problem. I see, things that are developing, and then I try to see solutions, and I try to see things that at the end will create a change, and more people will start to follow, like kind of what we did with Sabotage at first, and now what we're going to do with Mission Pro Wrestling, which was so funny because Mission, we were like, well, Mission Pro Wrestling sounds so silly, because it goes first because we're in San Antonio. But now it's like Mission Pro Wrestling has changed, and we now have a mission, and that is to empower women in the wrestling business. And Brian and I, when I joined the business, my goal was always to use a platform to change people's lives. And I didn't really know where we're going to start and where it was going to end, but I think this is the beginning. And it's the beginning for something very, very positive and very special, because this is like no fabulous moolah time. This is time to empower other women, teach them the ropes, and hopefully they learn and they can take that in the next level and to the next thing that they're going to do.
It is really cool what you're saying about the women being able to take charge on like every level of the production of the thing. That's going to be really awesome to see happen. I can't wait to see how that comes out. Guys, Thunder Rosa just jumped on here out of nowhere. We're grateful for her. Did you have anything else you wanted to throw at her before? She's obviously got to kind of get Brian back to work at some point. So.
No, I'll echo Gary. That's super exciting. And there's been a lot of talk too, in the restructuring of the NWA. We were talking about it earlier, just seeing more women step into those positions because the industry's changed. And if we've learned anything this past week, the treatment overall of women in the industry has to change. There has to be an elevation and more utilization of those talents. And so, as Gary said, man, we're fully supportive of what you're doing, and we'll put it over any chance we get. So keep us in the loop.
I will definitely. Like, we're gonna need always starting something new and something different. We're gonna need help, and we're accepting a lot of help. Like I said, I want to make sure that whoever we put in certain positions, that they learn how to use those skills to take them later on. Like, I'm so blessed that I was able to do camera, and I was able to do some sort of production, that I was able to sit in the back and Lucha Underground to learn certain things. And now I'm using on my YouTube, that I'm using for, Women's of Mission Pro, for costumes, to be able to make a living on my own. And that's the most important part, that not only use wrestling as a grudge or as a just like extra money. It is something that you can use to make a living out of it as a professional athlete, and that's the beauty of the sport. And this is the beauty of what I've been able to accomplish as a wrestler, and also how much you can empower other women and other men by teaching them, the right ways to do things. And that's something that, Brian and I, we hold to our hearts. And sometimes, like I said, we take that sweater in our backs to give it to somebody else. And a lot of people are like, man, you guys help so many people, and you guys do many things, and people stab you in the back and you still help people. But I always heard that, wrestling is a very backstabbing business. And even though I've been backstabbed, I've been stopped on, I've been the talk of the day, that doesn't stop me from doing what I know I was put in this world to do. And that was to make a difference one way or another in my community, in this community, and accepting people for who they are and not judge them, So yes, that's what we're going to be doing.
Yeah, and definitely folks should follow Mission Pro Wrestling on Twitter. It's posted right now in the chat. Mission Pro WRES1. We'll retweet that out and make sure people are aware of it. Rob, you had something to say. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was just going to tell you that we've heard those remarks about COVID and not defending the belt. And we have a steady answer for that, and that's that. One, being a champion is more than just wrestling. That's a big part of it, but you have to be a statesperson, which you are. You're out there doing community work. You're an activist. You and Brian are just great leaders in the community, and you carry yourself with such class and dignity, and you have such a human voice, and that's a big part of it. And the other thing is that, in the history of the National Wrestling Alliance, there are periods where you don't defend the title. I mean, we had a champion back years and years ago named Earl Caddick, who held the belt, went off to fight in World War I, and then came back like 2 years later, still the champion. And so, this little 90-day, 100-day hiatus, it's not a big deal. You are doing the work of a champion right now. And you are, we were talking, I'm a Presbyterian in my background, and that means I'm a Calvinist. So I feel like before the foundations of the world, you were picked to carry this trophy during this time. God chose you to do this. So you're uniquely qualified and you do it well. But I was curious,
it's hard to kiss more ass than Rob does. I tell you, it is an art form.
Man. This is all love right here. You call it ass kiss, I call it love, man. I was curious if Mission, is this going to be an environment or a venue? And I don't want you to say things that you can't say or talk too much detail, but is this going to be a place where you can defend the NWA title?
I mean, if it's possible, definitely. I mean, it's I wouldn't see why not. I'm like the owner. I can defend I can defend my titles. I mean, something I love to do, but I think I want to give the space to new talent, and I want to develop new talent, because I think it's very important to develop talent that are going to be teach, like I said, teach them the ropes, to be respectful, to be humble, and also to be strong as women, and by supporting other women. So definitely there's something that I'm thinking about. Like I said, right now I'm kind of like, I don't really want to wrestle as much because I don't know if I'm going to fight or not. And I don't want to get hurt between my fight camp. But as soon as I get an answer, I'll definitely, let you guys know. But one of the things that I want to do, and I talked about it with the team, is like, I want to defend the Tokyo Joshi Pro Wrestling before I go back to Japan. So, because I have not been able to defend my International Princess Championship. And there's going to be many other opportunities for me here in Texas to defend the NWA title, which I've been talking to other promoters about. But yeah, it's just like so exciting. Always starting a new thing is so exciting for us, because we have to start from zero. We have started so many things, and we have been successful, and but this is something bigger than us, and we really want to get the ladies involved in this, and in any, as performers, as knowing, using their knowledge on other things that had nothing to do with wrestling, and that is gonna just help Mission Pro be bigger. And like I have some crazy ideas that we want to implement, and I want to talk to like our new team whenever they join us, and see if it's even feasible. I think some of the stuff had never been done before, so I'm really excited. I'm like I said, and what? And Brian needs a job that is, besides folding and being a security guard and being on my ass about everything, he needs another job. Well, he's like on my ear all the time. But yeah, it's things have happened in my life for a reason. I've been able to have some good networks with some companies. So hopefully, it is going to happen. It's going to take a little bit of time, but we want to do it the right way, So, but yeah.
Man, that's awesome. I think it's a testament to, I'm not going to suck up as much as Rob, obviously.
Whatever.
That's even possible, but, I do think it's awesome that you take a moment like this, that many could consider like a dark time, and you've shined some light into it, and you're using it to your, I'm trying to think of the right words, because I don't want to, take away from anything, but obviously this just using this moment to make something better happen, and to turn things around for perhaps the people that were most affected.
Change. a lot of pain is going to happen. A lot of people are going to speak out, and a lot of people are going to be uncomfortable. But there's always a light at the end of the tunnel. And like, as you saw with the Black Lives Matters, people took advantage of the situation and said, you know what, it's time to us to try something different. Let's start putting new laws and change the laws and start doing something different. People are taking action. And sometimes it takes only a group of people to start taking action. I mean, some other people that are already starting their own stuff for women, and just to like to have like an overwatch in the business, so these situations don't happen as often, and people are actually are being not punished, but you know, if somebody has an issue, that they can go and feel comfortable talking to somebody, and they feel like they're gonna be heard, you know. So things like this need to happen in order to change something that has been a cancer for many, many decades, and everybody knows about it, you know. So like I said, it is very unfortunate that many people had to talk about it, and like I said, many of us have been distraught for a couple of days, and it brought a lot of feelings, but it is for the best, I guess, in many aspects of the business. It was a change that needed to happen.
Do you guys have I grateful for your time, so we don't want to take up all of it here, but is there something set up already for Mission Pro? Like, if there's ladies out there watching, I mean, I know that we have some females that watch the show. I think it's probably the beards that bring them in, but is there like some place that they can like for what you guys are looking for, or you'll just eventually put that out there?
Well, somebody was actually asking like if we're gonna have a stream service. Not yet. We don't know if we're gonna have a stream service or not. We don't have the technology to have stream service that day.
I imagine it's early for that. Yeah. We
want to do everything in-house. That's something that I learned in the last 6 years, that it's better if you keep things in-house, like editing. If you're gonna do your, live streams, or have somebody to teach you, and then you can do it. And done 100% by women. Maybe at the beginning, like some of our male peers are gonna help us how to do it, and then later on we take over and do it. Again, it's an investment. Like, we're gonna need a lot more money if we're gonna invest in equipment, and start doing it like that. Right now, we're just focusing on getting our core talent, and then who's gonna help us, book, create the creative team, referees, and all that. This is very important. And right now, it is challenging because there's not a lot of people that are women that are doing this kind of stuff. We all focus on just the performers, but there's so much more than just the performing part. And we're gonna need everybody's talent to make this work.
I think we're going to be surprised. I think once you put it out there, it's like that if you build it, they will come thing. I think that we might find out there's a lot more people out there that didn't know how to go about it or think they had a chance, and you're opening the doors for that to happen. I'm looking forward to this. I'm excited. I think it sounds awesome.
I'm crossing my fingers that, everybody understand we're a small company and stuff, and everybody understands that we're like, this isn't a smaller scale. I know that people are like, maybe a big company should be run by women, but we got to start, in a smaller scale. Like I said, a lot of people running women's shows are males, and I've mostly worked in all those companies, and I can tell you, sometimes it's not the best environment, because we're not allowed to say things because we're afraid that we're going to lose our jobs. But in this one, I think it will be very empowering for all of us, because the people that are going to be in the company are going to be people, like I said, have no egos and are there because they want to be there and because they want to make things different. And that's the key. But I just got a memo that says that Brian left his job. He hired a booker, Ryan Reed. And we just announced Ryan. I thought it was Ryan Reed. Robin Reed. Sorry, Robin. We announced that earlier.
Okay, nice. All right.
Breaking news.
Breaking news.
Heard it
right
first,
here,
right
exclusive. Yeah, got to thank you guys for that. Miss Rosa, we don't want to take up all of your time. I mean, you just jumped on here, and I'm sure you got a lot of stuff going on. I also don't want to sound like I'm kicking you off, so you're more than welcome to hang out.
I mean, we're excited. We're really excited for this new stuff. Like I said, the COVID is giving us a little bit of time to promote get talent and make this happen. And I know it's going to be very successful. Like, even if 25 people come and show up, it's going to be successful. But I know that more people will come and support this. The fans are very excited. And like I said, the fans here in Texas have been nothing but a blessing for my family and I. And anytime we started something different, they have come and supported because they know we treat them like family. We treat them with respect. And we will continue to do that because without them, we don't have a job. And that they showed me that throughout the last 3 months during this pandemic. If without them, I wouldn't probably been able to pay my bills. You know, I'm nothing but blessed, and I continue to be blessed. And like I said, I wanted to keep giving those blessings back, because if it's just all about me, you know, it's not about that. We're here for a very brief time, and we have to make the best out of it. We have to make that impact and help make this world better. It's time.
That's why you're the women's world champion. We started calling our community the hashtag NWA fam. But one of the main reasons is it feels like a family, this community of fans that talk about the NWA and everything. And we think of all of you folks representing in the NWA as part of that. And even, I mean, and once you're there once, I mean, like we've been pushing the hell out of Ricky Starks, like in his new venture, you know, he's obviously moved on, but we're super happy for Ricky. And he was kind enough to jump on here and have an interview with me after he'd already announced he was leaving the NWA and everything. And so we're grateful. Like, it's like, once you're in, and we want to promote and push you to, like, we just appreciate how open you guys are. And especially you've been amazing. You and Nick with this show, like, we can't speak more highly of anybody. You guys just like hop on here and talk to us and address the people.
Well, because you guys
so cool.
Relevant, no matter what situation we're in, you know, and or what happens with the NWA, you guys keep us relevant. You guys keep talking about it. You guys keep plugging that you guys are family, and definitely you guys are part of the NWA. You guys are the most pivotal part of the NWA, you know, by making podcasts, by supporting the Patreon, by watching Carniland, by watching our old stuff, by buying the DVDs, by, you know, being honest and giving us straight feedback. We're not going to get any bigger or any better if we don't hear the people that are there to support us, and then you guys invite other people and they become fans after that. So it's important that we take care of our fans, you know, and we listen to our fans. I mean, times are changing, and a lot of people are very reluctant to change their ways. And I'm talking about other companies, you know, and people continue to support that. But I know that we are making a difference regardless. Like I said, I can't really talk about it, but I love the NWA. And like I said, if it wasn't for the NWA, many opportunities. Sorry, my fucking phone is, sorry, I just cursed. My phone. If it wasn't
you're fine.
NWA, I wouldn't be living the dream that I'm living right now. You know, right. I get emotional because I care so much for this company. And you guys wouldn't have this podcast, probably, and we wouldn't be talking right now.
Right.
This company has given me so much, you know, and I'm very proud to be their champion, and I will be proud to like be in the books as their champion, no matter if I defend it or not, or what happened in the future. I can't even talk right now, but yeah.
No, it's I mean, it's amazing, just everything that's come together, and like with everything that's happened, I mean, we're definitely trying to focus on the positive things, because part of the NWA family is we care about you guys. We care about what you do and where you're going. That's why, like, when Mission Pro, like, once you guys get rolling, we're going to make sure everybody rallies to support that thing. We're not over here, like, one of the big things that we try to do, and we've all talked about it off of the show and everything, about how we look at things, because obviously things are going to come up in the chats or online or wherever else about everything going on. And we decided early on, it's like, we want to focus on the positive things that are happening right now. And the NWA is more than one person. The NWA is a lot of talented people that are working together to make something happen in the fans and in the ring and the backstage and everything. So we love hearing the passion that you have for what you're doing. And it just makes us even more feel like we've made the right decision in like what we're supporting, what we back, what is our favorite wrestling, and who are our favorite wrestlers. It's you've got all of our respect. I think I could speak for everybody there. I don't even know what to tell you. We love you, Thunder Rosa. You are the best.
Thank you.
Absolutely. And we just decided, I mean, we've been talking over the past couple of days, obviously leaving some space before we just jumped in and started doing episodes and stuff. But, you know, our sentiment is we're just going to continue maybe to even be a louder mouthpiece for the NWA during this period. And so I'm thankful that you've jumped on here and helped put that same message out from within the NWA because we believe, just as you do, that, I mean, better things are coming. Things are going to get better. Every obstacle is an opportunity for progress, and that's what this is. And we're going to see, you know, more than just a light at the end of the tunnel. It's going to be awesome. So you've encouraged and blessed me by coming on and sharing your heart on that, and it's been really great.
And I always share my heart. You know, that's all I have, brother. That's all I have.
I'll tell you, Thunder. I mean, when I walk into Piper's room and she's applying makeup on this half of her face and says she's Thunder Rosa, you know that you've made an impact. We love you. You know, this is not just entertainment. It's not just, you know, this is a life, and it's meaningful, and what you bring is worthwhile. And you are, again, you're the perfect person to carry this company right now during this, you know, difficult time, both with quarantine and what's going on this week. And I think you and Nick Aldis we are blessed to have you, and I can't tell you how much that we love you and respect you. Nothing but respect and love, and long live the Queen.
Thank you guys.
Yeah, I'm just happy you showed up so that you could. I can't imagine how much of a piece of shit Rob feels like because he was just talking all that trash earlier about you.
Don't believe that. Don't believe that, Mara. They're lying.
Well,
go back and watch this.
Listen to everything you tell me. So
Brian's got eyes on you, Rob, and
Brian's listened to everything. Like, if I don't know something, he will give me a summary when people are talking smack, and I can tell you that it takes me 3 hours to calm him down. That's a true story. Let me tell you that. That's a true story.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
I believe it. I had to ask you in your live chat the other day about him because he hit me up. He was hot about some stuff a couple of weeks ago. He was just like, are you going to talk about this? Because come on.
Yes, he was.
Yes, sir.
If you believe kayfabe, he's all about that. I'm telling you. I gotta calm him down sometimes, you know. So if you guys say something, then I'm gonna pass you the bill, because then I have to get him a lot of sugar and a lot of candy to calm him down. So just saying.
Just remember that, Rob. You're gonna see her in person again one day too, so you need to be a little more respectful.
You can't drive a wedge between me and Thunder Rosa. You can't drive a wedge. Don't try.
All right. I'm gonna go and finish washing the dishes and cleaning my kitchen.
Yes, thank you so much again for joining us. All the love in the world. You're the best.
Likewise, guys. Thank you so much for giving me the space, and don't forget to follow Mission Pro Wrestling, everybody. And what else shenanigans I'm gonna get into, because the world is my playground.
There it is, and we're gonna push every bit of it. Thank you, Thunder Rosa.
Thank you, guys.
Well, what else can we do now? Like, how do you top Thunder Rosa showing up out of nowhere, completely unplanned, just jumping on here? Just Rob talks some shit, and then she.
I talked nary a word of shit about Thunder Rosa. Y'all lying.
It's just really fun to lean into it. It's just really fun to lean into this thing. Oh man! Well, chat room, you were witness to that. That was unplanned. Mara just showed up, the NWA Women's Champion, just out of nowhere. Guys, I don't know what else. I mean, it's almost like we've got nothing left we could do to top that moment.
I mean, you kind of got to leave it at that. I mean, that's the vibe we want, man.
We're not doing the we're not going to do the deep dive into pro wrestlers versus zombies tonight.
Oh man, no, I think that's a whole episode unto itself. That's a cast broadcast where we can watch it, and then we'll do a review episode. Just a panel discussion about pro wrestlers versus zombies. I don't know if you guys out there knew that was a thing, but it definitely is. And Matt Hardy, Kurt Angle, I forget who I'm missing. Shane Douglas, Roddy Piper. How did I forget Roddy Piper? Yeah, that's pretty incredible. I can't wait to watch that someday.
Kevin Sullivan.
Anyway, Kevin Sullivan. That makes a lot of sense. I wouldn't even be right without Kevin Sullivan in there. Well, guys, I think we're gonna wrap this thing up for tonight. I mean, it's getting late. I got to go to the DMV tomorrow morning, so I'm not super excited about that, especially given the circumstances of the world. But my license is going to expire, and I have to get some kind of real ID or something. That's a thing in South Carolina. I have no idea what that means. And yeah, anyway. All right. Unless you guys have something to add, I guess we'll just thank everybody for coming out and hanging out with us. This has been a blast. We love talking to you guys, and it's our first time back since everything's been going down the way it has. We just want to remind you, if you haven't already, make sure you hit subscribe on the YouTube video. Make sure you're following us everywhere. It's at the NWA Pod. Everywhere that you can get on social media, we're there in some way, shape, or form. And we're wherever you get podcasts. And, of course, we go live usually right now on Tuesdays and Sundays, so you guys can come hang out with us then. But we'll be putting out a lot more content than that. And who knows what's going to happen with that as time goes on. And I don't mean with less stuff. I probably mean with more. So you guys stay tuned. We're gonna be we're revamping everything as needed. And so we got to keep the hashtag NWA fans strong. Who's over to your left, Rob?
You want to peek in?
I guess I am now. Hey guys, sorry for being on a line.
Hey, there she is, the lovely Miss Stinson.
Y'all.
See, we got a female presence on the show.
Sweet now, Gary. They've been giving me hell all night tonight, man.
I hated that. Give him more.
See, right, exactly. He's earned it.
Oh yeah, sure. Okay.
Oh.
Go have fun.
It was good to see you.
You too.
Rob, tell everybody where they can find you on the interwebs.
I am at rstinson4 on Twitter, Robert Stinson on Facebook, Robert Stinson on Instagram. I'm just now getting into Instagram. I never knew the power of it until this week.
I've seen it, man. You have been posting the hell out of some Instagram.
Yeah, man. Let's see. TikTok. I still got to get my TikTok thing. You can find me on MySpace at Tom.
Will is done with that joke.
And listen, I am one to run a joke into the ground, but that one's been run into the ground too much.
Hey man. You can find me on Napster and no, man, primarily at rstinson4. Of course, we put all of our content on at the NWA or This Is the NWA Podcast on YouTube. So you'll see Piper's Nuts there. We typically release those on Fridays. We've got the Prince of Positivity, Jared Fritz, coming up this Friday, so that'll be good. And we've got we do table talks.
Got my Advocare shaker bottle right here that came from.
Table talk is something that we do, and it's just something that I do with my youngest daughter, my 19-month-old now, Petra. And it's just father-daughter, meanderings about, life lessons. Pro wrestling makes its way into it. It's a lot of fun. It's humorous, and that comes on there too. And then from time to time, Tanya and I do Stinson Vision. We've got this Battle of the Sexes thing going on right now. It's all wrestling oriented, so it's all fun stuff.
Will, where can people find you?
Is it my turn? You can find me on Twitter at Hey It's Will with one L. On TikTok at Real Hey It's Will with one L. And then I promise, guys, I'm gonna bring the Daily Show back. It's been a rough couple of weeks, obviously, but I've got some ideas. for what we can do to continue to elevate the NWA on a daily basis. So be on the lookout for that. Follow my Twitter for some ideas that are going to be coming down for that I want all of you guys in the hashtag NWA fam to participate in. And so it's going to be a lot of fun. But that will be back. It's a daily show on this very channel. So as Gary said, go ahead and subscribe, like this video, go back and watch some older episodes, give us some love there, and just share out the hashtag NWA fam. I mean, as much as we'd love you guys to retweet us and stuff like that, just throw hashtag NWA fam out there. This is not about us. This is not about as we've learned, any one person. This is about the fam, the NWA fam. So let's keep that hashtag alive. Let's get it going. And let's keep the conversation going on all platforms, because this is a time period where, there's not going to be a lot of content coming straight from the NWA. So we are going to create content, we meaning us, and then you guys on social media and whatever platforms you've got. So let's ramp it up. Let's keep it going. Let's keep the positivity going.
Absolutely. Now more than ever, that's what the world needs. I am Matt. This is Gary Horn on all the stuff as well. And again, the podcast, the show at the NWA Pod. You guys come hang out with us. Brian Rosa says that love you guys. Good night. Even you, Robert. And so there's no better way to do that. Hey, Brian Rosa, thank you so much for your support, man. We really appreciate you guys. And it's honest to God, it's all the way back at you. Anything that we're going to promote the hell out of Mission Pro when that thing gets rolling. We'll talk about it all day long. So, all right, you folks, we'll put the tweet out and everything. Make sure you go follow Mission Pro. Make sure you're following Thunder Rosa and Brian Rosa even on Twitter and Instagram and everywhere. Those guys are very active. And that Thunder Rosa YouTube channel, big thanks to the champ for showing up tonight. Okay, that is enough for now. Thank you guys for hanging out with us live. I'm sure we will be seeing you again on Tuesday night. And more information about that to come, because we're still halfway trying to figure out what the hell we're doing anyway, too. Because I guess no new NWA content. So, but again, they're on hiatus. We're not. So we'll definitely be live that night. We can't wait to talk then.